LBC, it can't help but affect the cost of living.
Gas prices in Europe spiked almost from the start of the crisis. Oil prices have been a bit slower to respond, but are going up steadily. And the headline oil price is up enough. But if you look at the prices that we're paying for refined fuels, which I mean petrol, diesel, the things we really use, those have shot up to enormous levels.
President Trump's been calling for the UK and NATO allies to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. But former Defence Secretary under Tony Blair, Jeff Hoon, told Andrew that could double the risk to the West.
Modern warships have a lot of protection against incoming threats. But what we've seen even in Israel with an amazing level of defence capability is some of those drones, some of those missiles get through. And the Iranian regime would be delighted to see a British warship, or indeed a warship for any other nation, sitting there.
A second university in Kent has confirmed it's affected by a meningitis outbreak in the county, where 20 cases are under investigation. Canterbury Christchurch says one of its students is being supported. A rollout of vaccines has begun today at the Canterbury campus of the University of Kent. Former Chief Scientific Advisor to the UK, Professor Sir David King, has told Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC it's highly unlikely it will spread across the country.
And I do think that what is happening in Kent and in other places where these outbreaks occur, I think it's absolutely following what should happen. I've got no criticism. I know there were 2 days of delay between when the cases first emerged and when the announcement was made, but that's the time it takes to analyse what is up with the kids that have got it.
Rwanda has demanded the UK pays more than £100 million over the failed migrant deportation deal. The East African nation has taken Britain to court, claiming it breached the terms of its agreement and is owed the money. Former MP Crispin Blunt's been charged with 4 drugs offences. The 65-year-old, who once represented Reigate for the Conservatives, is accused of 1 count of possessing a Class A drug and 3 of a Class B drug. LBC's Charlotte Lynch says it stemmed from a search of his home.
Officers from Surrey Police searched the ex-Tory's house in Hawley in Surrey in October 2023. That was in relation to a separate matter, but these charges have come from that.
The Prime Minister says he's concerned after Travelodge's chief executive cancelled a meeting with MPs over a sexual assault at one of its hotels. A man was jailed for 7.5 years after being given a key card to the victim's room in Maidenhead in 2022. Travelodge says it's changed its policy since. 2 24-hour strikes by London Underground drivers next week have been called off. The RMT union says it's after progress in talks about proposed changes to working hours. Further walkouts in April and May remain in place for now. Today has been the warmest in the UK so far this year, but forecasters think the spike, which passed 20 degrees in parts of London and Wales, could be the peak for now. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 98 points at 10,305. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather clear tonight, although a few fog patches will form in the early hours. Chilly with the rural frost, a low of 3 degrees. After a chilly start, tomorrow will be another warm and sunny day with light winds for most of us, but northern England and southern Scotland will see some cloud, a high of 16 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Now, don't forget, I haven't said this recently, you can now watch the whole of our show, all 3 hours of it, on the LBC app, on Global Player, or the LBC YouTube channel. So not just audio, but video too, or streaming too, I suppose I should say. Now, I think one of the biggest stories of the last few days has been this meningitis outbreak in Kent, which I will admit that when I first heard about it, I was thinking, why is this leading the news bulletins on virtually every part of the media? And it still is. It's the biggest domestic news story today. Obviously, it's overshadowed by the war in Iran. But we are going to devote the first hour of the programme to the meningitis outbreak in Canterbury. It's now, there's been a case reported at a second university in Canterbury, not just the University of Kent, but also Canterbury Christchurch University. They revealed this afternoon that the UK Health Security Agency had confirmed a case of meningitis in one of its students. Now, 2 people have died so far. There are at least 20 cases. Now, this is not something that is going to be like COVID. There's no sort of danger of a mass outbreak all over the country. But it is quite clear that people are very, very concerned, particularly people who live in East Kent, particularly students at both of those universities for understandable reasons, particularly students who attended the nightclub, which seems to be where many of them caught it, the chemistry nightclub in Canterbury. So what I thought we would do today is get an expert on to answer your questions on not just this outbreak, but the virus in general. Because I don't think many of us know an awful lot about meningitis, and we probably ought to. We probably ought to be able to recognise the symptoms, because it seems to me that they're very, very similar initially to flu symptoms. But as it develops, other symptoms emerge. So we're going to talk to a top virologist, Dr. Simon Clark from the University of Reading. He's going to be joining me in a few minutes' time, and he'll be taking your questions, your calls right through the hour. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You can call or WhatsApp your question on that number, or text 84850. But of course, these sort of outbreaks are a challenge for national government as well as the regional public health authorities. If you live in East Kent and you want to give us your reaction to how the government and the Kent local authorities and health authorities have reacted, give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you too. And have you had difficulty if you've been searching for a vaccine? A lot of the local pharmacies have run out. Apparently it costs over £200. But the government say that that there are plenty of supplies nationwide. Well, to tell us more about the national reaction, Aggie Chambray joins us, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Aggie, it's one of these health crises that a health secretary has to deal with sort of almost off the cuff. What has been the reaction of the national government to this?
Well, we've heard, as you say, from the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and, there have been more cases confirmed. Today, 9 confirmed, 11 suspected. That's up from 15 yesterday. They have started getting jabs into arms, and there's been 650 vaccines administered to students, and 7,000 have now got antibiotics, which have a 90% effectiveness rate. But as you say, on Wes Streeting, he told ITV News this morning what the government's advice to the public is.
Firstly, whether you're one of the university students sitting your exams this week, whether you're at Canterbury College or whether you're at one of the schools in the area, including schools where we've seen confirmed or suspected cases, you should still go to school, you should still go to college, you should still go to university. The risk is very low. In terms of accessing antibiotics, if you're at Club Canterbury on the 5th, 6th or 7th, or you've had contact with someone, or you're worried about symptoms, seek medical help, attention and advice.
He was also asked by Susanna Reid, the presenter, whether there's a big enough supply available of the vaccine of meningitis B and whether people should seek out their own jabs.
We're not advising people to get the vaccine privately. We are, as I said, asking JCVI to consider whether we should make it more widely available through the NHS. It's not surprising me, frankly, that in recent days we have seen people approaching pharmacies to buy it privately. There is actually plenty of stock of vaccine supply in the country.
The pharmacies say they're running out.
Well, unsurprisingly, in a way, it's a bit like, if you've got on any product line, in any pharmacy or in any shop, they keep stocks based on usual patterns of demand. It's not surprising that in recent days demand is higher than it would be, and people are buying.
So it's just temporary, and there is stock available.
In terms of the underlying supply, there's plenty of available. That's the one thing I'm not worried about.
But you're not saying, look, we've had this horrible cluster, we've had 2 tragic deaths, and our hearts go out to the families, and meningitis B is obviously extremely serious. We're going to introduce a national vaccination programme for 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds.
Well, we're going to approach that in an evidence-based way. I don't want to do it in a knee-jerk way. We have been proactive in terms of what we're standing up today, in terms of the targeted vaccination programme. It's extremely unusual to stand up this type of vaccine campaign in such a short space of time following the initial case on Friday night and then the cluster on Saturday. We've done that as a precautionary measure.
There have been some accusations, Ian, that UK-HSA has been slow to respond, something they very much defend themselves against, talking about these individuals who've been seriously unwell, so it was quite difficult to ascertain detailed timelines of exactly where they've been and who they've been in close contact with. But Wes Streeting, when he was speaking in the Commons yesterday on Tuesday, he said he believes the response has been quick and competent, but said once the outbreak is over, he said once we are through this, we will obviously be looking at the handling of UK-HSA's response, since there is always more to learn. But speaking to people in government, they do say they do want to reiterate that pharmacies are less well stocked, and the priority for vaccines is for people in the area, for kids who get it on the NHS. But they do say that there is a national stockpile which is extremely well stocked. But they, I think, don't know why this outbreak has been faster and more extensive than previous outbreaks. Normally it would be that it would be 1 or 2 cases linked. Normally in this case there have been 20, and that number, very sadly, Ian, is expected to rise.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Aggie Chambray, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Right, joining me now is Dr. Simon Clarke, Associate Professor of Cellular Microbiology at the University of Reading. Simon, thank you for coming on the programme and explaining to our listeners exactly what is going on here, because I think a lot of us, I mean, we've heard the word meningitis. It's been around for a long time, but I'm not sure enough of us know what it is. I mean, apparently I've got it wrong because I've been calling it a virus, and as Paul in Eastbourne and several others are pointing out, meningitis B is a bacterial infection, not a virus, as you keep saying. Well, I apologise for that. Simon, what's the difference?
Good evening. Well, meningitis just means an inflammation of a membrane that surrounds the brain called the meninges. And in the case of meningococcal meningitis, that is caused by a bacteria, which we call the meningococcus. But meningitis can actually be caused by bacteria and viruses. There are tons of different things that can cause meningitis. It really just means that the infection has triggered the inflammation around the brain, which is a bad thing, I think, obviously. But this bacteria is probably the most infamous cause of meningitis, and it's one that really scares people, and that's why I think we're seeing the response that we are.
And I can only speak for myself here, but if someone says meningitis to me, I automatically think that young children are more susceptible to it, and probably more young children die from it than adults. Again, is that a misperception?
No, it's not. I mean, it is a disease predominantly of young children, but they're the most at risk. But teenagers and young adults are the second most at risk group. And really, the vaccines that we give come at either very young age for this particular version of the meningococcus, or in the early teens for other versions. So you can perhaps see why if meningitis is not caused by MenB, but or meningococcal meningitis is not caused by MenB, but one of the other types of the bacteria, then there's no vaccine for it in younger children. The problem we've got at the moment is that the teenagers and young adults were too old, frankly, to get vaccinated, because this vaccine has only been in the clinic for about 10.5 years.
Right. Well, we've got lots of WhatsApp and text questions coming in, so we'll come to those in a moment. We'd love your calls as well. If you've got a question you'd like to put to Simon, he's going to be joining me for the rest of the hour. 0345 6060 973. And again, look, people who live in East Kent, I think, are naturally really apprehensive of what is going on here. The fact that we're doing this for an hour is not designed, as somebody's put on a text, to scaremonger people. It's actually to try and inform people and educate people about exactly what meningitis is, how you can look for the symptoms, what to do if you think that you or somebody that you know, a member of your family, a friend, may have the symptoms, and what to do about it then. And we'll come to all of those things with Dr. Simon Clarke in just a few moments' time. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 15 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is a shambles.
Straight to the point.
How was that allowed to happen?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Show some evidence, Minister.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket. Geographical and other restrictions. Minimum spend £60 and charges apply. New customers only. Maximum saving £20 terms at ocado.com.
Take Irish ferries from Dover to Calais, where your pet travels in the pet lounge. You'd be barking not to. Irish ferries. See travel differently.
You want your car in good hands. With expertise, Halfords will keep it moving this spring with ease. You want your annual service ticked off. That's great. And in store, we'll fit batteries while you wait. You're never far from a garage or store for fitting, fixing, checks and more. You want mobile experts to fit tyres on your drive while you relax and take 5 to keep moving forwards with none of the fuss. You want Halfords, the name you can trust. Full T's and C's and exclusions apply. See halfords.com for details.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Iain Dale on LBC.
17 minutes past 7 on LBC. The number to call if you'd like to talk to Dr. Simon Clarke, ask him a question, or if you have a comment on the outbreak of meningitis B in East Kent. We'd love to hear from you, particularly if you live in Canterbury, Ashford, around the East Kent area in Thanet. How much of a concern is this to you? Or do you think that maybe this has been blown out of all proportion by many media outlets? Because it has been headline news. As I say at the beginning, I was slightly scratching my head thinking, is this really something that deserves to be at the top of the headlines in the national news? But I think I now think it does. 0345 6060 973. Before we go to the call, Simon, just take us through what the symptoms are for meningitis B, how people can spot them and what they should do if they do think that there's a possibility either they or someone that they know has it.
So the symptoms can be quite varied between people, but generally speaking, typically you get, as you said earlier, flu-like symptoms, so a fever, but often with chills, a stiff neck, vomiting, sometimes a sensitivity to light. The classic symptom, though, is the non-disappearing rash. It should be stated, of course, that people don't always get that. It's it's not something that you will always get if you have meningococcal disease. But if you apply a glass and pressure to a rash, if it's just an allergic reaction, then the rash will disappear, but a meningococcal rash will not. So that's the classic test, but it's not a given that that's always seen.
And if you do think that there's a possibility that either you or somebody else might have it, what do you do? Because, I mean, should you go to A&E, given that it is a bacterial infection, it could be passed on? Should you phone 111? What's the procedure?
I would phone 111 in the first instance, and they will talk you through it. But if you need to go to A&E, you will need to go to A&E because you will need to get antibiotics pumped into you as quickly as possible, because this bug responds very well to antibiotics, but time is of the essence.
Now, given that this outbreak is at, 2 universities now, where, I mean, there will be students who live in Kent, but there'll be many students who come to the university from all over the country. Yeah. And apparently a lot of them are going home because of this. Now, is that a danger in itself, that it could then be spread by some of those students unknowingly into other parts of the country?
Well, I think that the authorities are likely to have done a pretty good job of testing and tracing people who they think are more likely to have picked this up. Just because you attend a certain university doesn't necessarily mean that you've come into contact with people who are carrying the bug. But it's worth remembering that this thing lives in the back of the throat of upwards of 10% of the population in the UK at any given time. We've all had it. You and I have almost certainly had it in our lifetimes, and so has everybody listening. And 1 in 10 of them will have it, at least 1 in 10 of them will have it living in the back of their throats. They won't know anything about it, and it will never cause them a problem. But so when you churn a population, which is what happens when students move en masse around the country, there's always a risk of something like this. But this bug is found everywhere.
And I mean, we're told that the common thing among some of the people who've got it is that they were at this chemistry nightclub. So the suspicion is that they might have got it through kissing or sharing vapes. I mean, I don't imagine people would have thought that sharing vapes would have that possibility.
Well, I think those are two entirely plausible explanations. Anything you put in your mouth or mouth-to-mouth contact and use it to pass to other people, then that's going to risk transmitting saliva, which could well have the bacteria in it. I mean, I note that the government has started to advise against sharing things like cups and glasses. And of course, students who live in shared accommodation might be more inclined to do that.
Right, let's go to some calls and texts and WhatsApp messages. Margaret's in Clapham. Hello, Margaret.
Oh, hello, Ian. Thank you for taking me as a call. And I think some of your questions have provided some great feedback while the gentleman was answering. So my question is quite specific. So my nephew, who is 17, he's coming up to 18. He's been very unfortunate in the last few years that he's had TB, tuberculosis, twice. And he had a relapse last February, and he's under the infectious disease department at St. George's. So I've already been on the GP in a polite way, and the GP practice is officially saying at the moment they're not giving advice out to anybody because of it. It's all they're waiting for feedback themselves. So I've been trying to get through to the infectious disease department, who we know them very, very well, the consultants and the same nurses, fortunately. And he attends college. With the other students. So, and obviously having TB twice, he's a high-risk patient for a number of things. So I just wondered, what's your opinion or feedback or advice on that to the gentleman?
Simon.
So having had TB twice, probably what happened was it was never eradicated the first time around and it came back. Yeah. So it's difficult, to know what's gone on there. And really he has to take the advice of his physicians, of his infectious diseases physicians, because they will know his case in intimate detail. They will know his test results and everything like that, and they will know what antibiotics he's had. So they will be the best people to ask, but it's very difficult to answer specific questions like that.
Okay, no, I understand. Okay, yes, I'm trying to reach them, myself, because, he was very unlucky to get the TB back again. But sometimes it's like 1 in 20 comes back. He's with the same consultant, same team, and so he's suspect for for a lot of things that you have to be very cautious with.
Absolutely, Margaret.
TB is an entirely different bacterial infection. It's an infection of the airways and the lungs, and it's a very, very different bacteria.
Okay, Margaret, thank you very much for that. Let's take a text from Martin in Harrow. My daughter is in her early 30s with MS. Please ask your guest whether she's at any greater risk and what steps should she be taking. She's had shingles and pneumonia jabs and meningitis C vaccine as a teenager.
So I don't believe that condition MS is on the list of people who require the MenB vaccine. There are certain conditions like sickle cell disease and people who've lost their spleen who would be given that vaccine as a matter of course. So I guess that means that the powers that be do not believe that multiple sclerosis patients are at a greater risk.
Right, another one
Otherwise,
from...
they prescribe the vaccine.
Okay, another one from Sarah in Stroud. Please, can you ask the doctor how long the 2-dose meningitis B vaccine lasts before needing a booster? We paid privately for our 8 and 5-year-old to have the vaccine. They just missed the NHS infant rollout back in 2016. And I'm keen to know if they need to get a top-up to ensure protection. And maybe just adding to that, if you can explain about the vaccinations that infants and children can get on the NHS now, which they wouldn't have been able to before Sarah's children were born.
Sure. The children small children get, in their first year, get 3 shots of the vaccine. I obviously don't know what's happened in this case, but an adult going into a pharmacy and getting the vaccine would be given it twice. So it's a different regime. I think there is some evidence that after several years, the effectiveness of this vaccine begins to wane. But remember that we've only been using it extensively for just over 10 years. So getting good data on that requires time. If it's no good after 20 years, we'll only know that after we've been using it for 20 years, for example. So there is currently no advice on boosting with this vaccine, but I suspect that as we get more data, as time passes, and as more people start to ask that question, and it probably becomes more popular, then that may change. There may be advice on boosting going forward, but currently there isn't any.
Christine says, if you've had the MenACWY vaccine, are you then covered for meningitis B?
No, that is the whole point of having a Men-B vaccine. Now, when I was a student, it was considered that this was probably not a possible thing to do because Men-B, what you do when you generate vaccines is you attack the surface of a bug because that's the way your immune system gets at it. Men-B has characteristics on the surface that make it look a bit like our cells. So generating an immune response to it is difficult. And if it were possible, or if we were able to do it the old-fashioned way, if you like, then that might conceivably have generated problems. That problem was cracked over a decade ago, and the vaccine was introduced into the clinic, like I say, about 10 and a half years ago in the UK anyway. No, Men-B and Men-ACYW, there might be a very minimal cross protection, but I wouldn't rest on my laurels with it.
Thank you very much. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to put a question to Dr. Simon Clarke about meningitis. Sam says, can over 50s get it? And if so, are the symptoms different to younger age groups? And what symptoms would they be? My father is a doctor, so I should really know this, but unfortunately I don't, says Sam.
You can get it at any age, and indeed, the occurrence of invasive disease, like more severe disease, drops from your sort of 20s into your 40s and 50s, and into your 60s, it starts to pick up again. So older people are rich. You can get it at any age.
And Angie says, I work in private general practice in admin, and my whole day has been taken up taking calls from panicking patients. Yeah. My inbox is also full. We can't get the vaccine as the NHS comes first. I wish people would calm down.
I'm not a bit surprised.
Because I think we've heard that from a lot of GP surgeries and pharmacies, particularly in Kent, which I suppose is understandable. But this seems to be happening all over the country now.
I imagine, there are 2 major high street pharmacies that we've all heard of. I won't name them, that offer this service. And I looked on their websites today, and it had been suspended. I bet there is not a dose available in the country privately.
So much for vaccine scepticism, which we've been talking about a lot for the last few years. Stephen says, my middle school in Maryland, I assume that means the United States, had a meningitis outbreak in the 1980s. It was centred in the band room because brass instruments have a spit valve that students would empty on the floor. Oh, how disgusting.
Yep. Well, in this country, it used to be illegal to spit, didn't it? And spit on the ground outside. And that was really introduced as a law to try and curb the spread of TB. But anything which involves spitting will spread bugs like TB or indeed meningococcus. But in fact, when I was about 5 or 6, one of the lads in my class at primary school was hospitalised with meningococcal meningitis, but there was no swabbing, no testing, and there were no antibiotics given to us in my class. But that was quite a while ago.
Just on the outbreak in Canterbury, I mean, are you surprised that there have been so many cases, or are you sort of maybe slightly gratified that there aren't as many as maybe you might have predicted?
There are more than we normally get. You can only go on what normally happens and expect that to, set that as your sort of benchmark. Yeah. And this is high, and this is why the government the health authorities are responding in the way they are, because of course it could get worse. It could spread even further, but it might not.
Simon, we'll come back to you in the next half an hour because we want to put more questions from our listeners to you. If you'd like to talk to Simon, the number to call 0345 6060 973. I know we have a lot of listeners in Canterbury and that area of East Kent. So if you have a view on this, if you have concerns, we'd love to hear from you over the course of the next half an hour. We're also going to hear from Natasha Clark, our political editor, about an LBC exclusive story because ministers are considering a U-turn. What a surprise, on the immigration reforms which former Deputy PM Angela Rayner labelled un-British. It's 7:31, news headlines on LBC with Tim Humphrey.
A second university in Kent has confirmed it's affected by a meningitis outbreak in the county, where 20 cases are under investigation. Canterbury Christchurch says one of its students is affected. A rollout of vaccines has begun today at the Canterbury campus of the University of Kent. Iran's president confirmed the regime's intelligence minister has been killed. Esmail Khatib's death follows that of Iranian security chief Ali Larijani, whose funeral has taken place in Tehran. Oil prices have again spiked after production facilities were targeted. The US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, has decided to keep interest rates on hold. It has also projected higher inflation, steady unemployment, and only a single rate cut this year, warning the war in Iran is adding to uncertainty. LBC weather clear tonight, although a few fog patches will form in the early hours. Chilly with a rural frost and a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be, with headspace to focus on more important matters, like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics, with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools, and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:34 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls too, Dr. Simon Clark, about meningitis in just a few moments' time. But first, Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, joins us. And Natasha has a bit of an exclusive. Natasha, what's it all about?
Yeah, good evening, Ian. So obviously we've been talking about Shabana Mahmood's migration changes for a little while now, and we've been discussing the fact that many Labour MPs are not happy about them. particularly, they're not happy about the idea of changing indefinite leave to remain and changing it for people who are already in the country. And of course, we heard that stellar intervention from Angela Rayner last night, quite astonishing words coming out of the former Deputy Prime Minister's mouth, where she was talking about the idea of moving the goalposts. But I can tell you, Ian, that has already been on the cards for a watering down by the government for quite some time now. I'm told that Sir Keir Starmer, the Home Office, the Whip's office are all in agreement that they do need to look carefully at the consultation, which I'm told has had more than 200,000 responses since it closed a few weeks ago. And they are looking at possible tweaks to this system. Now, the government insists that they're not about to junk that policy. They will still be pressing ahead. They say that the principle remains exactly the same, but it does look like a potential climb down is on offer. One source that I was speaking to suggested that there could be sector-specific carve-outs for certain professions who may be negatively impacted by the moves. And of course, it has really worried people that have been working, contributing to the system and here in the UK for a number of years, but haven't applied for settled status, that they could be at risk. And senior sources in government I've been speaking to insist that it is those people that they are looking to try and cover. For example, if you've been here for 4 or 5 years, but you haven't claimed indefinite leave to remain, that is exactly the kind of things that the government is looking to potentially water down. However, I am told that it was way before Angela Rayner decided to intervene today that the government had insisted that they would be willing to cooperate on these plans. And some MPs that I've been speaking to today sense that Angela Rayner has basically sort of sniffed a bit of political opportunism here and decided that this was the time to intervene on migration. And actually one person I was speaking to that's been quite close to some of these negotiations has said, well, actually, she didn't even sign a particular letter which was convened by Labour MPs just a few weeks ago in opposition to some of the proposals. So some MPs are accusing her of a little bit of jumping on the bandwagon about potential changes that she may have got a sniff that are already in line to be changed. But obviously, for the government, this is going to be probably portrayed as yet another U-turn from Sir Keir Starmer. The government will insist that, well, we've always said we will listen carefully to voices and listen carefully to any opposition to try to get things right. A government spokesperson told me earlier today the government's position hasn't changed. We will always welcome those that come to this country and contribute to our national life, but the privilege of living here forever should be earned, not automatic. The government will double the route to settlement from 5 years to 10 years. We are currently reviewing the 200,000 responses and will outline our response in due course.
But what's she up to? Because she made this speech to the mainstream group of Labour MPs, which is effectively an Andy Burnham front organisation. And if you read some of the other comments away from this subject, I mean, it was a clear pitch to succeed Keir Starmer. Now, if Keir Starmer fell off his perch tomorrow, which I know he's not going to do, but if he did, she wouldn't be able to stand against him because she hasn't yet been cleared by HMRC, has she?
Yeah, you're totally right, Ian. I think she may be jumping the gun a little bit. However, she's clearly trying to position herself ahead of those May elections. And many people think that they're going to be very difficult for Sir Keir Starmer. But you are absolutely right. And I talk to MPs about this day in, day out, and they still feel that with that tax investigation hanging over Angela Rayner's head, it is still not there for the taking, basically, for her to become Labour Party leader if indeed Sir Keir Starmer were to fall. But absolutely, I think she is definitely positioning herself. And actually, one MP I was speaking to earlier feels that she maybe doesn't have the support of as many MPs as she likes to lay on. So potentially this is her way of schmoozing, working some rooms, getting some attention and trying to essentially get a little bit of extra support in the run-up to what might be a leadership election in just a couple of months' time. But you're absolutely right. It's definitely raised eyebrows across Westminster today. Keir Starmer's spokesperson faced a barrage of questions about this at the post-PMQ's lobby. They insisted that he still was sad to see Angela Rayner leave the cabinet and would still like to see her come back. They didn't say whether that would be tomorrow or indeed in a couple of months' time. But yes, absolutely. This has really raised eyebrows here in Westminster today. And I think this is one to keep a very close eye on.
And Natasha, thank you very much indeed. That's Natasha Clark, our political editor. Right, back to your calls and questions to Dr. Simon Clark. He's Associate Professor of Cellular Microbiology at the University of Reading. Just explain to us, Simon, what is cellular microbiology? Because I haven't got a clue.
So I study bacteria and how they interact with human cells. that's basically it. So I trained as a general microbiologist specializing in host pathogen interactions, and that's what I do. So I study the interaction between a bug and, in my instance, the human host.
You're obviously very clever. Much cleverer than that. Right, let's go to some more questions. This is one. It says, "Hi, I'm a taxi driver who does airport transfers in and around Canterbury. I run students to and from Canterbury to the airports." God, they've got far too much money if they can afford a taxi. Anyway, am I at risk, and are there any precautions I should be taking, please?
Good hygiene, good cleanliness. I assume you're not sharing drink bottles with the students. I have been asked about mask wearing. I've never been entirely convinced of their efficacy, but if that makes you feel better and makes you feel a bit more secure, then go for it. But I think really just good cleanliness and good hygiene are important.
Right, let's go to Frank in Islington. Frank, hello, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Ian. Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm very, very worried about my granddaughter because she has not had one vaccination since she was born. She goes to school in Cheshunt. My daughter is not against the vaccines, but her father is. He's a vaccine denier. I've had countless arguments with him since she was born, but my daughter can't get my granddaughter vaccinated without his permission. I went into the school yesterday.
Sorry, why does she need his permission? She's the parent.
She thinks she does. I don't know what's going on. They're separated. They don't live together. But she won't do it behind his back. That's the thing.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant her father, but you mean her partner, husband.
No, they were never married.
Yeah.
Right. So it's in Cheshunt. I've asked Jim, they gave me all the relevant information. I went to the school. I asked to see the headmistress. She weren't there. I waited. I gave her the letter. I also posted the letter. Gemini says that she's at risk because of this rule of you're never far removed from anybody. That's some mathematical statistical rule.
Your granddaughter, she's had no vaccinations whatsoever for anything.
Not a single one since she was born. Yes.
Okay, Simon. I mean that's a really difficult position, isn't it, for Frank to be in?
Yeah, it is, and vaccinations are not compulsory in this country. But what I think that does mean that anybody who is unvaccinated is at higher risk of childhood diseases. But they're relying on what we call the herd immunity of other people. That is the fact that most, if not all, of the rest of the class have been vaccinated against things, so they're much less likely to pass on an infection to somebody else. So you kind of glean a protection by dint of the fact that other people have been vaccinated.
And by what age should children have had all of these vaccinations? I mean, once you get to sort of 2, 3, 4 years old, is it then too late?
No, they're not. It's not too late. It's never too late. The other meningitis vaccine that gets offered against what we call a tetravalent vaccine against 4 different groups of meningococcus, A, C, Y, and W, that gets administered around 12, give or take a year or so. So, and of course, nowadays there are things like HPV vaccines which get administered to teenagers. So there is immunisation that goes on at the secondary school level as well. It's not just in infants and preschoolers.
I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer, but maybe you'll know the answer to this. I mean, if Frank's daughter decided, OK, I am going to get my daughter vaccinated without telling the father of the child, I mean, is she entitled to do that?
You're right. I'm not a lawyer. I don't see why. I would have thought this is the responsibility of the legal guardian. Let's put it like that.
Okay. Well, Frank, look, keep trying to persuade your daughter because it is so important that if herd immunity is to mean anything, you can't just rely on other people having their children vaccinated. She needs to do it herself. Thank you very much, Frank. Right, let's go to Saurabh, who is in Ealing. Hello, Saurabh.
Good evening to you both. I had a question for Dr. Clark. I have two daughters. The older one is 20, and she's at the University of Kent. The younger one is 14. We got both of them the MenB vaccines. They came in sort of two doses back in 2017. Now, with this outbreak, I've been trying to figure out whether that vaccine administered in 2017 is still effective for both of them or not. And I just haven't been able to get any information about this. So that was one question. Now, I'm actually on my way to pick up my daughter, the older one from Canterbury. Now, when we bring her back, the younger one recently got ACYW, I think, in school. Yeah. Does the older one also need that vaccine? Can we get them boosters for MenB? So a couple of questions.
So MenB first. I understand that the protection that it offers does drop off after several years, but there is currently no guidance on boosters and when those might be needed. So I think that might change as we get more data, because as I keep saying, this vaccine has only been in the clinic in the UK for 10 and a half years. But as we get more data on that, it will become apparent as to whether that's needed or not, and we'll learn that. But you're right, there is no guidance on that currently. As for the ACYW vaccine, that commonly gets delivered in secondary school around the age of 12, give or take a year, I guess. If people haven't had it, then it's as well to inquire about how it might be got.
And sorry, can I ask you, are you picking your daughter up because you want to get her away from this, or was this the time she'd be coming at home anyway for Easter?
No, I mean, partly you should have come maybe about a week later, but I am very keen to sort of bring her back before.
And is she anxious about it?
She has been, yes. And thankfully, she lives off campus, so I guess there is some level of protection and separation in that. But yeah, she's been studying in the library on campus, so we're just worried. And obviously, examinations and classes have all become online now, so yeah, it can be done.
Well, you can play back this call on Global Player on your journey back with her. Thank you very much indeed, Saurabh. Let me just tell you his on-cross question from 8. We have Joy Morrissey, the Conservative Deputy Chief Whip and MP for Beaconsfield, Alex Sobel, who's Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley, Charlotte Pickles, Director of the Public Services Focused think tank Restate, and Matthew Lawrence, Founder and Director of the Economy-Focused think tank Commonwealth. So they'll be here after 8, 0345 6060973. But before then, Dr. Simon Clark will remain with us answering your questions on meningitis. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 7:47.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Why is Tommy Robinson cheering on Nick Timothy, the Shadow Justice Secretary? And will Kemi Badenoch slap him down or join him?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
People ask me, what's my good place? It's in the garden, playing football with my girls. It's also knowing that because my pension is with Pension Bee, I get a beekeeper, a UK-based account manager for support should I need it.
You're not very good, Daddy.
At Pension Bee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
If you owned a diesel Nissan, Renault, Jaguar or Land Rover built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Don't miss out. you could be among the millions of drivers across the UK bringing diesel emissions claims. Check now at jointheclaim.com.
Join the claim!
Eligibility criteria apply and any compensation may vary.
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents. See toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
At 7:50 on LBC, we have with us Dr. Simon Clarke, Associate Professor of Cellular Microbiology at the University of Reading. Now, don't forget that what Simon is saying is only for guidance, and you should always seek your own independent medical advice. Now, Julia in Devon has some advice for Frank in Islington. Frank, if you're listening, think about this. She says, I would advise Frank to get in touch with the local public health nursing team, school nurses. They may be able to assist in some way in terms of supporting the child's mother. Right, let's take another question, a WhatsApp question here, if I can just bring it up. Haj says, isn't the large outlay of antibiotics going to cause a resistance problem? Simon?
It will inevitably put a bit of pressure on antibiotic resistance and mean that it is more likely to arise. But I think the numbers, believe it or not, are relatively small, and in terms of the numbers of people taking them, and the course, the time course of it is probably not that long. So given the impact this will have on reassurance, I think that it's probably worth doing, yes.
Right. Matt says, in 2023, I had my pancreas, spleen, gallbladder and duodenum removed. I then had a cell transplant. My son is a student at Canterbury Christ Church, and he's just spent the last 5 days with me. Should I take any action? I'm on penicillin daily. Well, I mean... I can't remember the day that all of these students attended this particular nightclub, the chemistry nightclub. But if he's been with you for 5 days, I mean that may be okay. Simon?
Yeah, and plus you're on penicillin daily. This bacteria is exquisitely sensitive to penicillin. It is not. We just had a question about antibiotic resistance, and any resistance that comes from people taking this is likely to be in other bugs. There isn't much resistance to penicillin anyway within meningococcus. If you have lost your spleen, then believe you're entitled to, or eligible, I should say, for the MenB vaccine. So if you haven't had it, maybe speak to your GP surgery if you've got no spleen.
It's a miracle you're functioning with losing all of those different organs. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Mo, who's a first-time caller from Leicester. Hello, Mo.
Hi there. How you doing?
What would you like to ask?
Yeah, so I'm actually on my way to pick up my son, so I'm just pulling up at a service station. So he's at University of Kent. He lives in one of the halls. And so he was lucky enough to actually get one of the vaccines today and then a course of antibiotics. However, I'm taking him back home because obviously the exams are all cancelled, they're all online, etc. But I've got 2 daughters at home. So one of them's 18, one of them's 20. So my question is, when I bring him home, do I need to isolate him from them? And what do I do in regards to their immunity as well? I don't believe they've had the MenB vaccine themselves.
Given their age, they're highly unlikely to have had the MenB vaccine. Obviously, I don't know individual cases. But as for isolating him, clearly, if he's been in all the residents, that's where the authorities think that there is a risk. That's why they've given him the vaccine. If he's on penicillin, he's probably clearing that infection. If indeed he has it, and we don't know he does, pretty quickly. So the chances are he doesn't, and if he did, the penicillin is probably dealing with that pretty effectively. So you have to make, it's your home, it's your family. You have to make a decision on what he does. But he's doing everything right. make sure he carries on taking his penicillin and finishes the course he's been given. But that's your decision.
And what would be the minimum sort of like isolation period in this case? Is there a sort of guidance on that? Or
no, there is no guidance on that.
Okay.
I think tell him not to share vapes with his sisters. I think that's probably and definitely not snog them.
No, he's been all right. He's actually he's pretty much been in his room because obviously he's been trying to revise for his exams, etc. So he's not been out anywhere. And obviously, because he's been fasting as well, so he's not really been out. So I think he's been kind of isolated himself in his room. So
Okay, Mo. Well, thank you very much indeed. See, I think, Simon, that's a really interesting call. We've had now 2 calls from parents who are picking up their kids from, I say kids, they're probably adults by now, children from their university, maybe a little bit earlier than they would have done. I mean, that is indicative of parental concern, but is it indicative of a little bit of panic setting in?
There probably is a little bit of panic setting in. It must be an uncomfortable situation for those students to be in as well. Let's not forget that. But they've obviously had no advice from the university or from the health authorities not to leave Canterbury, and we all remember during COVID that we were encouraged to not move around at times or not move from different parts of the country. So if need be, the authorities are not shy on giving that advice, and that hasn't happened.
Here's an interesting one from Diane, who says, can you ask your expert this? My 16-year-old daughter has an extreme phobia of needles and has not had any vaccinations as a teenager that are offered at school. Is there any other way to be protected other than through injection? I mean, is this pills not available for this?
No, not for a vaccine, unless it's polio vaccine, of course, which gets administered orally. No, these things get injected into your muscle where they generate their immune response. There is no other alternative, I'm afraid.
I mean, needle phobia is a terrible thing. A really good friend of mine has got this, who's like 22 stone, 6'3", and the sight of a needle makes him faint. And I mean, it is a terrible thing to try to have to fight, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if you've come across this before. And
I've heard of it before. There are companies trying to develop novel ways of administering these things, but I'm unaware of anything that's available clinically, either through the NHS or privately.
Sarah says, please ignore people who say this is scaremongering. I'm 31 years old and have only in the past few days understood what meningitis is and its symptoms. I'm sure there are lots of people younger than me who have children and are also learning. You won't find a better time to raise awareness about meningitis than an outbreak. This will stay in the public's memories for years to come. It has impact. Well, you've just summed up really why we've done this hour, because we had a discussion about whether this was going over the top to devote a whole hour to asking questions about it, but we decided to go ahead with it for exactly the reasons that you say, Sarah. So thank you for that. I sort of, Simon, I feel a little bit that we're vindicated by that text.
Well, people are either worried by something or they're not. And I think that, things get reported quite rightly. And if people weren't interested in listening to that or knowing about it, then I don't think media organisations would be very wise to dedicate as much resource as they are.
David says, we've heard that sharing vaping devices can spread meningitis, as would kissing. Can the meningitis spread to others through the vaping moisture released into the air near others?
So there was a lot of talk about this during COVID and whether smoking would spread it around. I don't think that's very likely. We don't have very many good mechanistic studies in spreading these sorts of diseases. They're quite difficult to do. They often throw up contradictory results. So I think it is unlikely, but it hasn't. Nothing like that has ever been proven either way, I don't think.
And the final text from Andy in Sheerness, who says, I had MB last year and was in an induced coma for 18 days. Fortunately, I made a full recovery, and would like to know if I'm more prone to catching it more easily.
I suspect you have a degree of immunity. As regards people's sort of innate natural susceptibility, we know next to nothing about the sort of the genetics of our susceptibility towards infection. So it's difficult to answer that. But having had the infection, you may have, well, you will have had an immune response to it, which hopefully should last for some time, but it won't necessarily last forever.
Simon, I've learned such a lot in this hour. I'm sure all our listeners have as well, and that's entirely down to you. Thank you very much for joining us and also for doing such short notice. That's Dr. Simon Clarke there, Associate Professor of Cellular Microbiology at the University of Reading. Now, just a reminder to seek your own independent medical advice about meningitis B and indeed any other health concerns you may have. Everything you've heard Simon say over the past hour is only for guidance. Coming up on Cross Question, you may want to ask about this meningitis outbreak on Cross Question. We have Joy Morrissey, Conservative Deputy Chief Whip and MP for Beaconsfield, Alex Sobel, who's Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley, Charlotte Pickles, Director of the Public Services focused think tank Restate, who's a former advisor to Sir Ian Duncan Smith, Matthew Lawrence is founder and Director of the economy focused think tank Commonwealth. So they're all here for the next hour to take your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number, you can text 84850, and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, a second university in Kent's now been affected by the meningitis outbreak. Canterbury's Christ Church University's confirmed one of its students has it. There are 20 cases in the county linked to a nightclub. Dr. Simon Clarke, Associate Professor of Cellular Microbiology at the University of Reading, told LBC the bug is found everywhere.
You and I have almost certainly had it in our lifetimes, and so has everybody listening, and at least 1 in 10 of them will have it living in the back of their throats. They won't know anything about it, and it will never cause them a problem. So when you churn a population, which is what happens when students move en masse around the country, there's always a risk of something like this.
Iran's supreme leader has warned those who killed its security chief Ali Larijani will have to pay. He's also confirmed the death of Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib in an Israeli airstrike. The US central bank's decided to keep interest rates on hold. It's also projected higher inflation and only a single rate cut this year, warning the war in Iran is adding to uncertainty. The Bank of England will make its latest decision on interest rates tomorrow. And disruption on the London Underground has been avoided next week. 2 24-hour strikes by drivers have been called off. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 98 points at 10,305. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather clear tonight, although a few fog patches will form in the early hours, a low of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. Joining me on the panel, to my left, Charlotte Pickles, Director of the Public Services focused think tank Restate. Next to her, making his debut on the programme, is Matthew Lawrence, Founder and Director of the economy focused think tank Commonwealth. We'll find out what that's about in just a few minutes' time. To my right, Joy Morrissey, who has been on the programme before, but not for a very long time. So welcome back, Conservative Deputy Chief Whip and MP for Beaconsfield. And next to her, Alex Sobel, who's Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley. They're here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, and of course you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Well, let's go to our first question. It's from Scott. He says, former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner delivered a speech yesterday saying that Labour was facing a threat to its very survival. And at today's PMQs, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch said that Keir Starmer needed to be replaced as leader by a strong woman. Is Kemi Badenoch right, or should MPs be backing Keir Starmer given the way he's handling the current Iran crisis? Lots to cover there. Alex, I'm going to give you a choice on this one. Do you want to go first or last?
I'll go last.
Okay. Joy, let's start with you then. Obviously, the strong woman that you would like to see as Prime Minister is Kemi Badenoch. But what do you think Angela Rayner's up to?
I think she's on full leadership maneuvers, and I think she was really launching her bid. She wants to out-green the Greens. She wants to be the new voice of the left, and I think she sees it as a moment of weakness, and she's going for it over the Mandelson.
And presumably that was why Kemi Badenoch brought it up at PMQs.
I think so, perhaps.
And is Angela Rayner somebody that you think would be a more intimidating opponent for the Conservatives?
Well, I think she's very popular. I mean, Alex can say more than I can, but she seems very popular with the backbench Labour MPs. She seems that someone who knows the North. They just lost a by-election to the Greens. She is very well liked across the grassroots of the Labour Party. So I think...
And actually quite a lot of Conservatives like her too, don't they? I mean, she's one of these MPs that, although she's thought of as being quite tribal, she actually has quite good relations with a lot of Conservatives.
I think she's a very political person. You should not underestimate her. I mean, but it would be very... Having been through this before in my own party, I think there'll be...
Several times.
Just so, one or two times. I think there'll be a real fight for the crown, and she'll probably be at the top tier of that.
And do you think that, given the public opinion polling over the Iran crisis, the way the general public seem to think that Keir Starmer's been right in the way that he's handled this, I mean, do you think he's on his way back a little bit from the trials that he had since the beginning of the year?
He has Mandelson, that whole issue floating around. That scandal is erupting. It hasn't even really been uncovered yet. We haven't seen what the papers are going to reveal. And that's a whole level of scandal that is waiting to erupt. So.
Okay. Matthew Lawrence from just explain what Commonwealth is in 30 seconds.
Sure. We're a think tank that starts on the premise that everyone should have a dignified, secure life and work back from that. So how is the economy owned? How's it governed? How are institutions designed to make sure everyone has an affordable home, a decent job, can access the basics that are sort of affordable, high quality, and live in a society where everyone can fulfil their potential.
And is Angela Rayner better equipped to fulfil those aims than Keir Starmer?
Well, I think Angela Rayner is only right to say Labour do face a really existential challenge. I think the root of that is the fact that Labour were voted in on a mandate of change, and in particular, the change people wanted was to address economic insecurity and address the affordability crisis. And while I think the government have taken a set of steps, most notably in the recent budget, I think most people are still feeling a real squeeze on their living standards, a squeeze that's likely to get worse in the current crisis. And I think that's the root of the problem. And I think, you mentioned sort of Keir Starmer did quite well over this crisis. I think over the weekend there was also this piece in the Sunday Times that I'm sure the panel would have seen, maybe some of the listeners would have seen. And I think that speaks to the Mandelson point, which is Keir Starmer didn't really know Peter Mandelson. He wasn't particularly good friends with him, but that is exactly the problem, because he sort of outsourced political decision-making. He didn't show political leadership. And I think that is what the sort of country seems to be lacking, a sense of vision, a sense of what is this sort of premiership about. And until that is gripped, and I think the affordability crisis is the thing to focus on, I think he's going to continue to stumble and these political vulnerabilities will keep erupting.
So would Angela Rayner be better equipped to deal with that?
I think Angela Rayner has a focus on the cost of living crisis, which I think is what unites Labour's base. If you look at the polling, it's very clear that the people that are sort of leaving Labour, whether it's to Reform or whether it's to the Greens or the Liberal Democrats, it's broadly people who are united by economic insecurity and the affordability squeeze. So I think Rayner centring that would be sensible. I mean, I think there's a long way to go. Obviously, there's challenges that are known about her pathway, but I think clearly, she's definitely on manoeuvres, it would seem. But I think as long as anyone is centering that cost of living focus, I think that can be helpful.
Charlotte.
There's so much in that question, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Where to start? It's a brilliant question. And if really it comes down to has Keir Starmer bought himself a bit of time, a bit of space at this point by his reaction to the Iran crisis, and that will, in some way protect his premiership? I don't think so. And I think, as others have pointed out, most voters do not, unless there's something very, very exceptional, do not go to the polling booth and vote on foreign policy. They go and vote on domestic policy, and they go and vote on, are their kids in a decent school? Can their granny get an appointment in, with a GP or a hip replaced? Do I feel like I've got a decent job and decent wages and better off? And I think on all of those counts at the moment, people would be answering a pretty resounding no. Would Angela Rayner be better equipped, have the right answers to generate growth in the economy, which ultimately is the vital thing for all of those challenges? I'm not sure. And, I think the problem really comes down to the fact that Labour have come in. They've actually done quite a few things that have been deeply damaging to the economy. And part of that cost of living crisis, of course, not all of it, but part of it has to be laid at their feet. Of course, there are important things to do around protecting workers' rights, etc. But Angela Rayner was the person who drove through the Employment Rights Bill. That is going to be harmful. The increases in wages for young people, in principle, sounds great until you realise no one's going to employ them anymore and you can't get in at entry-level jobs. So all of this is going to be added in, and with the Iran crisis, sure, people, I think, understandably feel like this is, not territory we want to get involved in. Goodness knows how long this is going to go on and how stuck people are going to be, but they are going to start feeling the effects of. We've already seen 500 plus mortgage products removed. We're already seeing the oil and gas prices ratchet up, despite the fact that actually we in this country get very little of our oil and gas from the Middle East. But obviously the global market is driving up those costs. We probably aren't going to get the interest rate cut. We're seeing mortgage interest rates already going up. This is going to be hugely, hugely damaging to the government of the day. It's not their fault, but it is going to be hugely damaging.
Alex, I bet you now wish you'd gone first, didn't you?
No. The big reveal is I was at the speech last night.
Well, I was going to ask you.
So I heard it firsthand rather than second-hand reporting. So I'm probably in a slightly better position to comment on it. The tenor of the speech, and I think Matt got a lot of this, was about that people. That the country and the battle for the country now, and then, it's a battle of ideas, and it's the ideas of progressives broadly, or it's the ideas of Nigel Farage and reform and that sort of model, and that people feel, and Matt called it the affordability squeeze. I think it's probably a bit broader than that, but she said it was about a rigged system where people, although they studied hard, worked hard, money didn't last the month, people didn't have savings, rents are going up, mortgages are going up, as Charlotte said, and that the work that she did in government as Deputy Prime Minister, the Renters' Rights Bill, the Leasehold Reform Bill, we can have a debate about the Employment Rights Bill, but I'd include that in that, is the sort of work that Labour government does to show it's on the side of people and it's taking on vested interests. And she also was very clear, this isn't about who leads the party, this is about the policy and about delivery for the country, and that we don't have a lot of time, which is just a fact. A 5-year parliament might seem like a long time, but it takes a year end to end to get legislation through. And once the legislation, even once the King signed it, doesn't mean it's happened. So the Renters' Rights Bill is 6 months till it's not even implemented yet in May. And what we're getting in this now period, in the run-up to the implementation, is some landlords, very few, are using section no-fault eviction because they know that in May they won't be able to do it. So that's the sort of tenor of the speech. And, and in the Labour Party, the system is that you collect 80 nominations and then you trigger a contest. Nobody's asked me to sign the nomination papers, not Angela Rayner or anybody else.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't have yet, but I wasn't there, you were there, so you can easily knock back anything I ask you. But the fact is...
weren't you there, Ian?
Funny enough, I was doing the show. But the thing is, the papers, and it's not just the Telegraph, but other papers have picked up lines from that speech, which Joy, I think, probably correctly has interpreted as a sort of, part of saying, look, I'm here. If the party needs me, I'm here and ready, and I've got ideas. And the criticism that Keir Starmer has is that he may be a sort of competent technocrat, which would have been welcome after the Boris Johnson years, but he doesn't have the political sort of background. He doesn't have the vision. And you see Patrick Maguire and Gabriel Pogren's update to their book. I mean, it is littered with examples of where he's not really what we would all describe as a natural politician, and that can be a big weakness in his position.
That's a different question, isn't it?
I like to bring in different.
That's not about Anna Rain. That's a question about. Yeah,
I mean, you
about
can't
Keir.
deny that she is up to something.
I think the I don't know, but I imagine, because it's been going on quite a while, we're getting to the end of this HMRC investigation. I don't know whether she knows what the result's going to be or any idea, but I think that the vast majority of the PLP want to see her back in government as soon as that's finished. And maybe this is about that, you know. And I think that if she was asked to come back into the cabinet, she would come back into the cabinet tomorrow, and I'd welcome that.
I think you're right. I think most Labour MPs would welcome it. It's just be quite interesting to think what position she would be offered. Joy, if you were Keir Starmer and she was available, she'd been cleared by HMRC, she'd paid off the tax, and she was ready to come back, what position would you offer her if you were him?
You can put her as Foreign Secretary and let the world see what they have to look forward to as her as Prime Minister.
Well, that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? Anybody else want to come in?
Yeah, that's a fine role for her.
I was in Rome with her at the Ukraine Recovery Conference last year, and I was in the room when she met with the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, who's now the Prime Minister of Ukraine, and she handled that very well. And Ukraine is our biggest crisis, not the Middle East and Europe.
So she's got this reputation as being very upfront and a little bit undiplomatic. I actually think she'd be quite good in that role.
That's also what a lot of people are quite enamoured of now, right?
Yeah.
They don't really want the polished, sort of slightly fake, slightly, the kind of veneer politician. Actually, they want people who feel a bit real. And I think Angela Rayner really resonates with the public, regardless of, what I think about some of her policies. She's a phenomenal communicator. I think she'd be a huge threat to the other parties if she was leading Labour. And you mentioned there about Keir being a kind of competent technocrat. I don't think he's been competent in any way since he's come into government. I think we've seen that by the number of U-turns, the fact that things aren't being fixed, decisions that have been very poor. But Angela Rayner is great at the politics, and I think it would be fascinating to see what the polls would do if we had Angela Rayner as leader.
Don't disagree. Right, more in a moment. 0345 6060 973. Apparently I've got Boris derangement syndrome, according to Sarah here. 16 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Interactive Investor would like to say welcome and thank you. Welcome to all our new investors who joined us over the past few months, and thank you to a certain competitor that decided to change their fee structure and sent them all our way. Visit Interactive Investor to see what you could save with our low flat fee. Interactive Investor. I think, therefore I. Remember, when investing, your capital is at risk.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
Train to Cambridge and then all aboard the paddleboards. A little bit different, should be fun. Or wobbly, or wet. The wetsuit's a good look on you, Steve. Oh, actually, this is very relaxed. Georgie's up the River Cam without a paddle. Train home, that was such a laugh. I think I might even have a new hobby. Download the Thameslink Railway app to book tickets and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
18 minutes past 8. Well, it hasn't been a very cross question so far, but we still have 42 minutes. Joy Morrissey is Conservative Deputy Chief Whip and MP for Beaconsfield, or is it Beaconsfield?
It's whatever you. I say.
It is
no,
definitely
I say,
not
you.
Beaconsfield.
I say Beaconsfield, and that is.
I grew up there, and
he
it's
grew up there,
definitely
and he
not
went to
there.
Morlays.
Yeah,
It's sort of old home week here. So
I wondered if it was a Shrewsbury type thing.
No.
That's the voice of Alex Sobel, who's Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley, who, if you're watching, you will see he is resplendent on his lapel is a massive badge thing. What is it?
It was presented to me by the anti-corruption unit in Naboo of the Ukrainian government for my work on Ukraine. Yeah. I'm not sure we call it brooch badge. I don't know.
It sort of almost looks like a school badge.
It's a bit like stained glass windows. Is that shape?
Yeah.
Did you have a similar one at Borlays?
Now, Charlotte Pickles from Restate is not wearing a badge, nor is Matthew Lawrence, founder and director of the think tank Commonwealth. Follow-up text to the last question here from Chris, who says, Angela Rayner also called the Home Secretary's planned immigration reforms un-British, while it's now being said that the government might U-turn on this as well. Should those plans to make it much harder to come and live in the UK legally go ahead still? Alex, you can start this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real concern amongst Labour MPs is a plan that's out to consultation, so it's not one that's being planned to come to Parliament now, and consultation is consultation, but I would say that, wouldn't I? And that's that indefinite leave to remain would become much more difficult, it would take many more years, there would be a continual process for people, and this would be applied retrospectively as well, and this is for people who've arrived here legally, not people on the boats, through every method, including at the moment potentially, and Ukrainians asked me about this, Ukrainians and Hong Kongers, and I think that is fundamentally un-British, and I think Angela Rayner's absolutely right, and I hope the government relooks at this, and then we either keep, I actually think our current rules are too stringent, never mind these rules, so I think she was absolutely right to bring it up, and I think she reflected the views of the vast majority of Labour MPs, and actually the vast majority of my constituents, maybe not other people's, but that's what I'm getting on the doorstep. Yeah.
So the retrospective part of it, is that what you object to most?
No, I mean, that is the most heinous bit, yeah. But
That's a strong word.
It is, yeah. Well, look, my parents were immigrants to this country, so this is how I always look at it. If they came now, what would happen? I wouldn't be here, they wouldn't be here, and that's how I judge things. And my parents, including my mother, who's enjoys constituency, are pillars of the community.
He's got me over a barrel there. And he sided with my pronunciation of Beaconsfield. So it's very hard to.
Sorry, Joe.
Okay, Charlotte, what do you make of this? Because, I mean, Shabana Mahmood's announcements on this were, I think, stronger than I've heard any Conservative Home Secretary articulate. They reflected the policies of the Danish government, which is also a left-of-centre government, but has imposed some very strict immigration rules. It's the sort of thing that Nigel Farage has been talking about.
Well, you know what? I was actually on your show when she made the announcements. It came up as one of the questions whenever back it was. And I remember at the time, wasn't it, that Reform UK had mocked up they used some AI image of her as a Reform UK politician. So anyway, yes, I mean, it's incredibly robust. I think that language of un-British is very interesting here, because if you look at the polling, actually a significant majority of the British public, when polled on these measures, actually support them, and including those that would vote for left-wing parties, both Labour and Greens. At Leeds Central may be and Headingley may be a very special kind of area that has very different views from others, though I slightly doubt it. And I think this gets, a bit difficult when we're talking about people who believe the numbers, and I mean, you may not have Boris derangement syndrome, but we could refer to the Boris wave here of immigration, where we did see huge numbers coming into the country. The public are quite uncomfortable about that, and so to say it's un-British, I think, is a little bit offensive to an awful lot of British people who would class themselves as patriotic, kind of upstanding members of this country, and who are compassionate and do want to help people, but also want to have strong borders and want to make sure that they feel the numbers coming in, staying here, are appropriate. Where I do think, and I have some sympathy with what Alex is saying, is that, the kind of, if you're someone who's been in the country for 4.5 years at this point, and you thought in the next 6 months you were going to get settled status, you have paid your taxes, you've worked hard, you've done all the things you've been asked to do, to then be told, oh, by the way, you've got another 5.5 years now to do that at best. And you know, that could be shorter or
and
longer.
even if you get it, you'll then be required to re-get it
Exactly.
every 2.5 years. I mean,
I think that is
I don't know if you agree
difficult.
with me. I think a lot of people look at this and they look at the generality and think, well, okay, we've got to restrict immigration. And then they think of somebody that they know and think, oh, well, of course, it's wrong to happen to them. And I've got a friend who came here, 7 or 8 years ago from Sri Lanka. It took 5 years for the asylum. He was gay, and he took him 5 years to get the asylum claim through, and he got indefinite leave to remain. But under this system, he could possibly be sent back, which...
Well, and actually, I mean, I don't know why the decision was made to have quite a wide variety of time spans. So actually, someone coming over under the proposed reforms who is granted asylum, and therefore we have deemed them to have been persecuted or at risk in some way. And that is where I think the British public are very compassionate, actually, as we saw with Ukraine and we've seen with various other schemes. Actually, that person will have to wait potentially 20 years. That does seem an awful long time if we as the state have said that person has the right to be here.
Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously is a subject that has a lot of heat, but I think the majority of people would agree that they want a system that is fair, that treats people humanely, that sort of serves the needs of the public, but that also people who want to come, contribute, settle, love, learn, work hard, that the rules should be fair. And I think, as Alex and others have pointed out, that sort of sense of the rug being pulled out just doesn't feel particularly British in that sense. But also I think, as you say, Iain, some of the policies might sort of seem popular in the sort of generality, but in the sort of, when you drill into the specifics, what this will mean, for example, is there's a piece of research out by IPPR, a sort of think tank today, that around 100,000 children will be pushed into poverty as a result of the sort of the proposed measures. So it's there's this tension at the heart of the government of like some of their policies are pushing in a good way, trying to tackle child poverty, trying to make sure every child can grow up with a decent home, secure income, sort of be the best they can be. And then this policy is pushing against it. So I think it is a bit of a confused policy. But I think to sort of speak to Raina's point, I mean, I think her broader point is the government is pushing away many of its natural supporters. So not just on migration policy and the rhetoric as much as the detail, but on that sense that they're not doing enough on economic security, that the cost of living crisis in the sense of a rigged system is not being sort of the centre of their waking moment every day. And I think that is really what she was trying to articulate, the sense that this Labour government needs to stand up more for working people in all manner of subjects. And that's actually the kind of urgent priority as much as kind of details.
Joy.
You'll be shocked to hear that I fundamentally disagree with Angela Rayner's stance. I do feel that with indefinite leave to remain, that you get right to family reunification, which is the highest level of net migration with family reunification. People don't quantify that, but that is a huge proportion of migration numbers. And a lot of people came here on temporary work visas. They were meant to be temporary. There is no sort of clarification if you were here on a temporary work visa, but you've overstayed for 5 years, you should not get to be able to have indefinite leave to remain. You have to prove that you were here following the rules, that you were sponsored by a company. There are very stringent rules. I'm one of the few MPs that had to go through the immigration system, so I know what it's like, and it's there to make sure that you're committed to this country, that you understand what it means to be British. And this is something that will just allow people many who have come here on temporary visas or student visas who haven't actually been given the right steps of temporary leave to remain to even be given indefinite leave to remain. And once you have indefinite leave to remain, it's one step away from you can then become a citizen, you can get your passport, and you can bring over as many family members as you want. And I don't think that's fair.
But isn't it interesting that on this panel, it's the Conservative Deputy Chief Whip who's defending Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood's policy?
It probably is the only Labour policy this year that I was like, oh, that seems pretty sensible. But everything else, I'm 100% like, I can't stand the employment rights bill. All the other things I just think are ruining the country. But in a weird sense, I was like, oh, well, there's a little bit of sense. And then, of course, I feel like they're sort of trying to play to the Greens. They're panicking about the Green vote, and they're sort of, oh, we better go more, to the left. We better be more sort of socialist than the Greens. And they're forgetting that the North they care about this. They care about this everywhere outside the M25.
Alex, is there a bit of that? I don't know your constituency, but my instinct tells me that there may be a bit of that in your constituency, that you might be losing support on the left to the Greens.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, particularly on these sort of issues. Yeah, and we've got. I mean, first of all, Joy described exactly the situation of my family. My family came on student visas. I was born 4 years after they were here. They hadn't yet finished. They effectively went through the system then, which was much more lenient than now.
I thought it meant finished having children.
Well, they did finish. I was the only one. So they did finish having children, but they finished their studies, and they decided to stay because they had a child here. And I think that is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. And I know lots of people in a similar position to my parents from then till now, and all of them have made a significant contribution to this country and become culturally British. So that's really important, that it's not, what I'm concerned about is sometimes these policies, although they're talking about numbers and about process, there is a thing where people are trying to dress it up under a guise about ethnicity and race, and that does concern me. The other thing about this, and I will answer your question, is that people generally think the numbers are much higher than they are, and some people will conflate the numbers of people who've come either on asylum or immigration generally with the number of ethnic minority people that are in this country. And that's really concerning to me. And so we need to be very careful about the language you use and ensure that we're accurate in this and we're not conflating things. And I've now forgotten the original question. So
it's about the Greens.
The Greens, the Greens. So I think, for me, it's not. I'm not influenced by other parties' policies. I'm influenced by what I see on the ground and what I think is the right thing to do. So, the Greens have got some very funny policies in certain areas which I don't agree with. But don't suddenly go, oh well, their policy on maternal health, which is I don't agree with at all. I'm suddenly because I'm worried about the Greens, I'm going to suddenly adopt that. That is not how I approach things.
OK, we will go to the news on time for once on Cross Question. It's 8:30 here on LBC. The news headlines are from Daryl Jackson.
A second university in Kent is affected by a meningitis outbreak in the county. Canterbury Christ Church Uni says one of its students is being supported. 20 cases have been recorded in the area. Iran's new supreme leaders vowed revenge for the killing of the country's powerful security chief, Ali Larijani. His death's been followed by that of Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib. And tube strikes planned for next week have been called off after progress in talks between the RMT union and London Underground. However, the dispute over drivers' working hours isn't over, with further strike dates still to be scheduled in the coming months. LBC weather clear tonight, although a few fog patches will form in the early hours, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Any tips for the racing? Yeah, your best bet is to head to BetVictor for their new customer welcome offer. If you bet a minimum of £10, they give you £20 in free bets on the horse racing. But here's another tip. If you're at the races, head to the paddock. You get lots of info they don't put in the race cards. Like what? Like the fact I'm seeing one of them drop a lot of weight right now.
Oh. Listen to Harry and make your best bet on the racing at BetVictor. 18 plus, opt in, bet on horse racing at odds of evens or greater, no cash out, 7-day expiry, terms and conditions apply, gambleaware.org.
Hey you! Yeah, you! What would you like from your investing app? 6% interest on your ISA, a free share of your choice, or no commission on stocks and ETFs up to €100,000 per month? With XTB, you get all of the above all in one app, the XTB app. Get your free share and start investing with XTB today. XTB, where your money works.
Capital at risk. Investment values can rise or fall. Limited free stock availability. 2% ISA rate boost for 90 days. New clients only. T's and C's apply.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to recharge yourself and your phone. To stretch out, sit back, and when you hear "all change please," you'll know you already have. Go with your flow with great deals at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:32 on LBC. Charlotte Pickles is here, Director of Restate. I always ask you this, what is Restate for the people who don't know?
It is an independent, cross-party public services think tank.
Used to be Reform, but for obvious reasons you changed the name.
It is, and we try and put that behind us. But kind people like you, Ian. We wrote to the Electoral Commission at the time and said, look, guys, this is going to be really confusing. And the Electoral Commission came back and said, we only care if it's confusing when someone literally goes to the ballot box, walks into the polling booth and casts their vote. But I can tell you, until we changed our name, we had reams of correspondence that was aimed at Reform UK. So it's been enlightening.
So if you had decided to put up candidates in an election, they couldn't have called themselves Reform UK, could they?
I think so.
Yeah, well, you missed a trick there, didn't you?
Well, if they go for Restate, then that's what we'll do.
See, I mean, Commonwealth is a great name for a think tank.
Very good for Google searches.
How long did that take you to come up with?
One of the original names was Transition, which given the that's the sort of sneak sort of biography of Commonwealth. No, it was names are. I think you think a lot about names, but actually,
and then they suddenly come to you.
Yeah,
right?
and also it's really the content and quality of the work. You could kind of
also
IPPR is not a very interesting name, but it's
And that's the voice of Matthew Lawrence, who is the founder and director of Commonwealth. Joy Morrissey is Conservative Deputy Chief Whip and MP for Beaconsfield, and Alex Sobel is Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley. Right, a text question from Andrew. During Prime Minister's questions today, Sir Keir Starmer deliberately avoided answering the same important question 3 times from the Leader of the Opposition on his vetting of Peter Mandelson. Why does the panel think he was avoiding answering this specific question? And should the Speaker intervene more fully to get the PM to actually answer the question posed by opposition parties, given the PM appears to be increasingly evasive under scrutiny, which is tending to make a mockery of the format. Now, it has to be said that Keir Starmer is not the first Prime Minister and certainly won't be the last to essentially... I mean, often he asks Kemi Badenoch questions rather than answer the question that she's put to him. But is that any different from any other Prime Minister, John?
Oh, it's totally different. If we had refused to answer the questions every single time, and he sort of gaslights Kemi in a way. He just, every single time she asks the question, he doesn't answer, and then suddenly he'll answer some bloke's question, and he's just... It really looks bad. It looks like he has a woman problem. And if he doesn't want to answer the questions, we might as well not do Prime Minister's questions, because it is the point of that, to answer the questions. If any of our Conservative leaders had done that, the Speaker would have called us out. They would have been forced to.
Boris did it all the time.
Yeah, but then he was called out by the Speaker all the time. I mean, all the time. And so the fact that he just doesn't answer the question, what is the point? He's making a mockery of the democratic process. He should answer the question. It is condescending the way he treats Kemi, and I do think he has a women problem, but beyond that, he should just answer the question.
Okay. Matthew?
I think, I mean, the wider thing is, like, why is he evading the answer in the first place? And I think that, again, that goes to his mode of sort of governing, which is kind of absent. It's kind of not getting involved in the big decisions. And that is why the Mandelson crisis, in a way, landed in his lap, because he just did not grip the issue. And I think that is the kind of signature sort of mode of the Keir Starmer premiership, of just letting things drift, being like kind of oddly unpolitical for a political figure, not really sort of having a clear sense of what matters, what his priorities are, what he's going to fight for. And I think that's where the sort of disorientation, the sense of confusion, the sense of rowback has come from, and a sense that some elements of the government are putting in a sort of more progressive direction. So employment rights, I would say, would be one of those areas, but in other areas less so much. And so I think, the sort of back and forth, in the House of Commons, I'll leave to the sort of front row participants to comment on. But I do think it speaks to this kind of almost like governing the void, this sense of like, well, what is Keir Starmer's political project? Why is he outsourcing the vetting project of the ambassador for the US to sort of junior staff members? These are sort of like, it's quite an odd thing to do, really. And I think what people are looking
that junior.
I mean, no, nonetheless, but it's a type of thing I think most people would say this is something he should have, been sort of a bit more actively involved in. And then I think that speaks to kind of a problem of a lack of political grip.
See, I'm going to argue with you there, because I don't think that it is the Prime Minister's job to do the donkey work in terms of saying, well, what did Peter Mandelson say here? That's what you have advisors for. That's what you have a chief of staff for. That's what you have a director of communications for. And they come to you and say, right, this is our advice. And then the Prime Minister acts on it.
Sure, but I think if alarm bells don't ring, if you're not a bit sort of like, hold on, it's Peter Mandelson. We should perhaps be a little bit more inquisitive rather than saying, well, yes, okay, tick that. And I think, so yes, I understand, of course he shouldn't be in the weeds, but it is that sense of political antennae, a sense of what are the risks?
That's the problem. He hasn't got political antennae.
Indeed.
Alex?
I absolutely think we need full clarity and transparency about the process and what the Prime Minister didn't do, and we haven't got there yet. I don't think PMQs is not the place for it. That I also think that we're currently sort of in mid-release, aren't we? To the Intelligence Scrutiny Committee. I mean, if I was the Prime Minister, I probably would allow the Intelligence Scrutiny. I would release it all and then go in front of the committee and answer. I don't think PMQs is the right. I don't like PMQs. I'll be honest. I think it's like political theatre, which actually undermines how we operate in Parliament most of the time. But I think the Intelligence Scrutiny Committee would be the right place to go and do that, and I hope that's what he does.
What do you say to Joy's points about Keir Starmer sort of mansplaining a bit to Kemi Badenoch?
I'm not a great attender at PMQs for the reason I just gave. So, but I mean, I have been in the past, and that is not. I didn't go today, but that is not what I recall. And the sort of play acting of both the Prime Minister leader, the opposition, and some of the other party leaders at PMQs, goes back
That's
to as far as
David.
that goes back to when I first came. Actually, Theresa May tried a bit harder, I would say, to be serious at PMQs. But apart from that,
Okay, Charlotte.
So I don't think this is about political judgment, actually. I think this is about competency, coming back to the conversation we had earlier. So the political judgment is what is the type of person we want to put in the ambassadorship. But the competency is this person fit to do the role, regardless of whether politically it's the right decision or not? And I think on both accounts, he woefully failed. And to Matthew's point, Peter Mandelson resigned, twice, 3 times? Had to resign from government?
He's resigned as a cabinet
twice.
minister twice.
Yeah. It's not great CV credentials. You probably would want to
To be fair, one of them, it was proved afterwards that he shouldn't have resigned. He had no need to resign.
But they're still probably going to trigger a few questions. And, why would he not answer the Leader of the Opposition today? Well, because what would be the answer he'd give? Oh, no, I didn't have a single conversation with the person that I was appointing to the most important ambassadorship that this country has. Or, no, I did, and therefore I lied, because actually all this stuff has come out saying that we did know that there was a closer relationship there. There's kind of not an answer you can give, right? And I think that should be deeply troubling to people. I mean, really troubling, more than the lack of political antennae, the kind of evasion, the lack of interest. You're governing the country, and America and the special relationship, and particularly with the volatility of that at the moment, that should be one of the most important appointments you make. And you, by all accounts, were totally absent from it.
OK, let's go to James in Gravesend. James, what would you like to ask our panel?
Well, first of all, good evening to you, Ian. And don't you have a fine panel on tonight?
We do. Very thoughtful panel.
You're very thoughtful.
Corey's furious.
Right then. My question is not a trick question. It is, do you think Nick Timothy was being Islamophobic when he articulated his opinions about the big iftar on Trafalgar Square? Or was he just articulating an uncomfortable truth which is shared by many but spoken by few?
Right, now the background to this, for those of you that have missed it, Nick Timothy, he's the new Conservative Shadow Justice Secretary. He described public Muslim prayers in Trafalgar Square as an act of domination, adding that the domination of public places is straight from the Islamist playbook. Keir Starmer brought this up in PMQs and urged Kemi Badenoch to sack him, and said that he would have sacked him had he been a Labour minister, saying that sort of thing. Charlotte, let's start with you.
I know Nick. I don't think he's Islamophobic. I'm sure he wasn't intending that to sound that way either. I'm also not religious at all myself. And, while I have no issue with anyone practicing their religion, and we have, lots of different religions in this country, I'm not sure I do really want to see mass religious kind of ceremonies or I mean, any religion, and Trafalgar Square has hosted mass religious occasions for nearly all religious groups. But I'm not sure we do really need that. I think people can practice religion in their religious churches, synagogues, mosques, wherever it is they go, in their homes. So no, I don't think he would have been being... Really don't think he'd been being Islamophobic. He clearly is concerned, and he has done, I think, some actually pretty good work in other areas in highlighting things we should be concerned about.
But wasn't it quite Trumpian, sort of effectively playing into this narrative that London is somehow under Islamist control?
Oh, no, I don't think he was saying that. I mean, maybe I've missed something that they said, but from what I saw, I think it was a tweet. No, I didn't get any impression that he was saying that. But my goodness, I mean, if we called out everyone that was a bit Trumpian nowadays, I mean, we'd be, firing everyone left, right and centre, wouldn't we?
Not sure we're going to do that on this panel. But, Matthew...
Look, I think, absolutely right to condemn him from Keir Starmer's. I think the tweet did kind of imply that it was sort of a shadowy Islamist threat sort of being manifested in Trafalgar Square from what I read. And so I think it was, really completely inappropriate. But, my main sort of reaction in a way was almost like to feel sorry for Nick Timothy, that he could see an act of community, an act of coming together in prayer, an act, of, community life that many religious communities share and non-religious, that Trafalgar Square is a sort of space of coming together. And to see that not as that type of community, but actually as a threat, as a sort of sense of danger, a set of his fellow citizens, his fellow neighbours in the city, as somehow a sort of illegal, invasive domination. And I think that's quite sad actually, to sort of view your neighbours, your sort of fellow sort of Londoners in that way, particularly when many other religions, many other sort of civic, sort of Chinese New Year, so on and so forth, have these celebrations at Trafalgar Square. And I just think it speaks to a kind of it's kind of quite small, narrow sense of what a society can be and the richness and diversity of the city.
Actually, let's take a follow-up call here from Robin in Whitehaven, because I think it plays into this very easily. Robin, what would you like to point out?
Well, my question is Starmer at risk of being called an hypocrite? Calling for Kemi Badenoch to sack Nick Timothy regarding his comments about the Trafalgar Square and the prayers, following Starmer's Island of Strangers speech. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
OK, well, let's put that to our other two panellists. Alex, that's a fair point, isn't it? If you talk about an island of strangers, how is that any different to what Nick Timothy said?
I'm not... Well... First of all, I'll just comment on the Nick Timothy thing while I'm thinking about that. So I've got his tweet in front of me. He said, mass ritual prayer in public places is an act of domination. That was his first line. Somebody should tap the Pope on the shoulder and tell him he shouldn't go to St. Peter's Square, because that's exactly what happens there with far more people in Trafalgar Square last night. We're going to have a national prayer breakfast. I think it's next week in Westminster Hall. Maybe we should cancel it. I think that if this was applied to Christianity, which is our established religion, people would be absolutely appalled. It's Ramadan. It's an iftar. It's a very big iftar. I've been to a lot of iftars. Every iftar, people go and pray before they break the fast. That's how it works. It's not an act of domination. Ramadan actually is about charity, and it's about a whole range of things that we would actually see as very British values practiced by Muslims here. So I don't at all agree with what Nick Timothy said. I equally didn't agree with Keir when he said about as you can probably guess from my earlier comments about the Island Strangers. Now, does it make him a hypocrite? I mean, I'm not sure. I think they are different things, and they're both wrong. But I think Nick Timothy's is more dangerous.
But the fact you even had to think about that is slightly indicative, isn't it, Joy?
I support free speech, and I support anyone's right to say and to criticize any religion. And I do feel that we need to allow for free speech and for discord. And I don't have a problem with public prayer, but we've seen when Christians were praying outside an abortion clinic, there was absolute public outrage, and people were voicing their outrage, and they were allowed to. No one said, "Oh, you can't criticize the Christians for praying outside an abortion clinic." So I think we just have to allow, we are a democracy, we have to allow for free speech, and we have to allow for people to disagree with one another.
Can I just jump in there? Because I do think there is a clear difference for, sort of, if not in Trafalgar Square, it's for one-off, and the act of praying or sort of Christians gathering outside an abortion clinic is explicitly to try and intimidate and dominate the people going into the clinics to access reproductive rights. So it is actually that's a category area. They are very different things.
One could argue the same thing for any religious organization or religious, meeting. And anyone could say, if you were Sikh and you felt intimidated by this gathering, or, we could descend into things that make us all feel uncomfortable, or religious ceremonies, but we should allow for the right to say it. What I don't like is how we've adopted this new sort of definition.
So as Deputy Chief Whip, if there was a mass meeting of Orthodox Jews conducting their ceremonies in Trafalgar Square, and one of your MPs used identical words to those that Nick Timothy had used about Muslims, you'd be okay with that?
I'd say let's have a dialogue and discuss why
you'd sack them.
Well, I mean, I believe in free speech, so I am more tolerant than maybe many MPs, but I do believe that people have to voice their opinions. And oftentimes MPs are voicing their concerns from their constituents. I know that Nick is speaking up for constituents in the silent majority that feel like their voice isn't heard. And I know that others are speaking up for, I think we have to understand.
He represents West Suffolk. Is this really the biggest subject of discussion in Newmarket? The fact that 500 Muslims happen to be celebrating their religion in Trafalgar Square?
Okay. People feel like they cannot say what they feel. And people feel like the grooming gang scandal is just now being uncovered. And people are still afraid to say and to have a dialogue. And now we have the anti-Muslim hate law sort of put down as a non-statutory law, but how long is that going to last? And people are afraid to say their views. And I think we need to have dialogue from all sides. We need to treat all religions equally, and we need to treat everyone with respect and decency.
Right, we will be talking more about this subject after 9 o'clock, and possibly not just concentrating on the Nick Timothy incident, but why do we have such a problem of public displays, not of affection, but of religion? That's the question after 9. Actually, we might ask about the PDAs as well. More questions to come, 10 to 9.
LBC.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Right, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Sunday Leaguers, dog lovers, beat clubbers, banga dancers, baby ravers, potters. Whether you walk it, jog it, or run it, go all in against cancer. All in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries. See travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on!
Sorry. And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 5th of April with our expert insights, excellent service, and wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Right, Joy Morrissey, Alex Sobel, Charlotte Pickles and Matthew Lawrence here taking your questions. Here's one from David. It's a very short question. Simple question. Should politicians be on Cameo? Now, 2 Reform UK MPs could be in trouble over their use of the website, which allows users to pay public figures to record video messages for them. The Guardian has revealed that its leader, Nigel Farage, has endorsed a neo-Nazi event and referenced anti-Semitic conspiracy theories in his videos, while the Reform Chief Whip, Lee Anderson, has filmed paid-for videos from his parliamentary office, which may breach the rules which prevent MPs from using the Palace of Westminster for their own commercial gain. A Reform spokesperson has said that given the high number of videos Mr Farage is asked to record, the occasional mistake can occur, while Mr Anderson's spokesperson has said he has donated the money he receives to charity. My favourite Nigel Farage cameo video is when he wished happy birthday to Hugh Jas. Get it? Alex.
Well, I think you've just given the example of why MPs shouldn't be on Cameo, because people try and trick them into saying stupid or offensive or racist things. And the only real purpose of Cameo is to make money. And I think I'm not against MPs writing books, or if they're a lawyer, keeping their professional, or a doctor, keeping their professional credentials, but Cameo is not professional or, an intellectual pursuit. So I don't think that MPs should be doing it for money.
It is now the time to reveal that I am on Cameo.
Just you've got an intellectual Cameo.
A declaration of interest. I can't say I make a lot of money from it, but there we are. Joy.
We do have pretty strict parliamentary rules for all of us that we're not allowed to do anything commercial from the parliamentary state. So that's a rule that all of us will be done by.
But if he's donating the money to charity, what's the problem?
No, they're still very, very, we all are governed by the exact same rules. And we have to also acknowledge the fact that I think this is a wider issue where they're looking at Reform and the Greens. You have to admit they have incredible reach on social media, and not just with Cameo. I'm not talking about that, but just in the wider reach, they far surpass any of the big parties. And to the point where, for example, the Greens don't even need to do mainstream media because their social media reach is better than any other party. So if we try to curtail them and we try to stop them, it will probably only make the parties that already have huge followings, bigger than any of the standard parties, it will probably just make them feel that their party is being victimized, and they'll probably follow them more. So I don't know if it's going to be the solution they think it is going to be. And we probably just all need to learn how to be better on communicating it.
I wonder how much Lee Anderson charges. Is it 30p?
I was going to say 50p, so
we can all put a fund in.
Higher. Well, if the question is, should politicians be on Cameo? I certainly wouldn't be in the kind of realm of saying we should ban them from being on the site, but and now Iain, you've told us you're on it, so
now we can't say.
So what I was going to say,
I
think it's about 84 quid, so I think I read, but I was going to say there's no bar to there's no bar of stupid people being MPs, and this would sort of fit into that category for me of you're an MP, you're a public figure, you're not even vetting the things you're saying. That's just,
so you're calling me stupid.
It's just, and that's what I was saying. I was going to say that, but then when I heard you were on it, I thought I shouldn't say that. But I don't think you should ban them. I just think it's pure stupidity, isn't it? Like, you have more common sense than that.
Matthew.
I tend to agree with Alex on this, and we spoke about Keir Starmer's antennae earlier. It's indicative of, I guess, Nigel Farage's antennae that he couldn't notice what was being said there. I think there's a sort of maybe a sense that sort of these type of media investigations, which are interesting, but can be like gotchas for Reform, and that might somehow erode their support. Whereas I really think it will be water sort of a duck's back in a way, and the way to sort of beat Reform will be a serious offer on affordability, cost of living, and taking on a sense that the economy doesn't work for working people, and that is actually the way to sort of defeat Reform.
And immigration.
And immigration, but immigration is about a system that works for working people too, because it can immigrants are workers too, and.
Oh, for sure. It's just that it's also the third top item that polls as the most important thing, and so Labour will have to have a strong position on that.
Just before we come to the fun question, for our two MPs, what's the one thing that you get really frustrated that as an MP you now just can't do? That you would be, if you were just a private citizen, you weren't an elected politician, that you kind of miss or would like to do, but if you did, you'd be sort of hauled over the coals for it.
I haven't really changed my lifestyle too much. I still go on the bus, so I'm not Nigel Farage or Keir Starmer. So and I trust people in my constituency who do know I am. So I haven't really tacked my lifestyle in. The one thing that I don't do is a more serious point, to be honest, that I used to do is we used to do supermarket surgery, so just open surgery, anybody could come. And then after David Amos's murder, we stopped doing that because it was too dangerous. So that's the only thing. Yeah.
Well, that's brought a bit of a pull onto the conversation, Joy.
Well, I sort of swear like a sailor, and I'd like to pretend like I curved that, but no, I have not. And I used to play women's rugby, and my husband said you cannot beat up on. Yeah. He said you can't go and beat up on constituents, so you need to stop playing women's rugby. And I have stopped, but I've taken up other contact sports. So,
like what?
Well, horse riding, but that's kind of not very good at that.
Well,
I feel like I made it that way because I kept falling. I just fell off. I fell off so much. Like I broke my arm. It's not been good. So mixed bag. But yeah.
Right, time to move on to our fun question from Martha. Blackpool, Inverness and the Highlands, Ipswich, Middlesbrough, Milton Keynes, Portsmouth, Sheffield, Swindon and Wrexham have all been shortlisted to be Britain's next city of culture. But why should where you're from get the title instead? Charlotte.
Is it unfair to say I don't think it should? So I'm from... Gosh, everyone's going to hate me, aren't they? Know where I'm from. So I am from a little town called New Milton, which is on the south coast.
So small, I've never heard of it.
Exactly.
Never had a caller from there.
All those people from New Milton get calling in tomorrow night. I want to hear your questions. And it's really just, it sounds awful. It's just a kind of bog standard kind of British coastal small town. So I'm not going to give a pitch to it.
Which of those cities would you give the city?
Well, I was trying to count how many I've been to, and I think it's maybe only 4. I really like Sheffield. Okay. It's got, it's a classy place, got great architecture, good culture. So why not give it to there?
Matthew.
Well, despite my accent, my grandmother is from Inverness and my grandfather was a Gaelic-speaking crofter just down the road from where Donald Trump's mother is from, on the Isle of Lewis. And honestly, I think there is honestly probably some sort. That's where my politics is from, obviously. Can you not tell?
Same but, speaking style.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of feel like I'm duty bound to defend the Highlands and the Islands. But I'm from Maidenhead, which so I'm not really from Maidenhead, but let's say I'm from Maidenhead. And obviously, well, not obviously, it's also a very sort of nondescript town in some ways. But its claim to fame recently is on the Crossrail, sort of Elizabeth line, and obviously what it shows is public luxury, public investment, a state that builds and invests is what creates control. Yeah, well, sort of long-term investment. Theresa May was my local MP, but I think that's what it shows. That towns can be transformed.
On Friday week, I shall be addressing the good burgers of Maidenhead.
That's a great burger joint.
The conservative ones of them, anyway. Alex.
This funny story. So Leeds bid to be the European capital of culture. And then a little thing happened in 2016 and they removed us from the competition. The whole country, obviously, not just Leeds.
Is that right?
Yes. So in a very Leeds way, we did it anyway. So we had a year of culture. But from the list, I would definitely support Sheffield as well. Let's think about the great films that come out of Sheffield, Brastoff, Full Monty, everybody's talking about Jamie, the great bands, Pulp, Human League.
Except for Wednesday.
Yeah. Well, they're going through a hard time, so, and I'm a Leeds fan, so let's not talk about the football.
But where are you actually from?
So I was born in Leeds, then I moved to Sheffield, then I moved to Beaconsfield. So I could do a whole lap here, yeah.
Joy?
Well, I have one panel member from Beaconsfield and one who went to school in Marlow, so it's a tug of love between those two as my amazing cities of culture. But I have to give it to Marlow because it is an incredible market town. It has everything, gourmet restaurants, wonderful shopping. You can spend the whole day there. During COVID, we were the first to open up, and everyone from London came out to Marlow. So I'm not sure why it's not on there. I feel like it must be.
And which one would you give it to?
It's also where the Shelleys lived, and I think where Frankenstein was potentially written.
Yes, and you can do a Shelley's walking tour if you would like to.
Yeah.
That's a new thing that we offer.
Well, I'm going to nominate Saffron Walden in God's own county of Essex. That's where I'm from. But I would pick the Highlands and the Islands.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ian.
Culture.
Yeah.
So
Debut
with my
gift.
endorsement, you're bound to lose. Thank you all very much indeed. Now, on tomorrow's panel, we have the former Conservative Minister Matt Warman, the businesswoman and political activist Gina Miller, plus the entrepreneur and former Tory advisor Leon Emirali. And I think one more as well, but we don't know who that is yet. So that's coming up tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming on the panel. It's been a very, very good discussion, I think. Really enjoyed this panel. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to return to the subject of public displays of religion. Why is it that if you are ultra-religious, you feel the need to tell everyone about it. It's a bit like being a vegan, isn't it? I don't particularly want to know if someone's a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Sikh. I've got no objection to people having religious views. I don't have any religious views myself, but so what? But is it all about tribes? You belong to a tribe. It's a bit like Alex is a Leeds fan, I'm a West Ham fan. We belong to those tribes and we don't care who knows about it. Is it a bit similar to that? Do you feel the need to share your religion with other people? Do you become an evangelist for your religion? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, a second university in Kent confirmed it's been affected by the meningitis outbreak. Canterbury's Christ Church University says one of its students has it. The number of cases now stands at 20. Carly Goodwin's 21-year-old daughter Keely is in hospital with meningitis B and told LBC News she thought her daughter was vaccinated.
She said, Mum, she said, it's getting worse. She said, my head, she said, I've never experienced anything like it. She said, I can't sleep with it, I can't move, I can't do anything. My head is so bad, it's so painful. Meningitis wasn't even a thought because I believed that she was fully vaccinated from being a baby. And it was only that somebody commented and said if she's 21, she wouldn't have had the MB vaccine. It didn't come out till 2015.
Iran's supreme leader has warned those who killed influential security chief Ali Larijani will have to pay. It follows confirmation by Iran that intelligence minister Ismail Khatib has also died in an Israeli strike. Meanwhile, President Trump has continued to criticise the UK for not joining his strikes on the country. Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat, is questioning the Trump administration on the US decision to go to war in Iran.
Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States. Unfortunately, our allies have been alienated and distracted by the administration's unilateral threats like invading Greenland, and the result is clear. Americans have been left more exposed in an already dangerous conflict.
Two men have been charged with allegedly spying for Iran. The Met says the Iranian national and British Iranian national have been charged over alleged surveillance of locations and individuals linked to the Jewish community in London. The pair, aged 40 and 22, are due in court tomorrow. 3 people have been charged with murder after a man was found dead in a wheelie bin in a park. Tom Niven's body was discovered in Coventry on Friday. A woman and 2 men, all from the city, are due in court tomorrow morning. And tube strikes planned for next week have been called off after progress in talks between the RMT union and London Underground. However, the dispute over drivers' working hours isn't over, with further strikes still scheduled in the coming months. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 98 points at 10,305. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather clear tonight, although a few fog patches will form in the early hours, a low of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It is 6 minutes past 9 on LBC. I want to talk about religion in this hour because there's nothing I like better. Actually, no, there is. I like vegan phone-ins, but I also like religion phone-ins, and that's what we're going to do over this hour. Because even though I'm not a religious person myself, it does fascinate me. It fascinates me as to why people are so devoutly religious. It doesn't really matter what the religion is, but they all have something in common. They all believe in a greater being. A being that nobody has ever been able to show actually exists. And this is not something that everyone believes in, but there are lots of people that I respect. There are lots of people whose intellect I respect are absolutely religious. They believe in their God, whatever religion it happens to be, and they believe in the afterlife. They believe in the virgin birth. They believe in the resurrection, if they're Christians. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I can't do that because I would have to have it proved to me. Now, I know the key word here is faith. It's not proof, it's faith. I do get that. But even though I'm not a scientific person, I don't have a scientific brain. I was absolutely useless at all scientific subjects at school. The logical part of my brain says, how can anyone with half a brain believe in all this mumbo jumbo? And yet, a lot of religious people want to share their religious beliefs with others. They want to persuade others that their religion is the religion to follow. Again, I've got no great objection to that, but a lot of people seem to. And the reason we're talking about this today is because of what Nick Timothy, the Conservative Shadow Justice Secretary, has only appointed a few weeks ago, when Robert Jenrick defected. It's what he said on Twitter today, or X, where he said that he didn't. Well, I haven't got the exact. Have I got the exact text here? I'm not. He called a act of prayers by Muslims in Trafalgar Square an act of domination, and that's understandably provoked quite a reaction from a lot of people, particularly the Prime Minister. Well, let's just go through the discussion which the Prime Minister and the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, had about these comments by Nick Timothy during today's Prime Minister's questions.
He said last night that Muslims praying in public, including the Mayor of London, practising his faith, are not welcome. He described it as an act of domination, straight from the Islamist playbook. If we're in my team, it'd be gone. It's utterly appalling. She should denounce his comments and she should sack him.
He wants to talk about justice secretaries. His justice secretary is abolishing jury trials. My shadow justice secretary is defending British values. I know who I would rather have sitting on the front bench next to me, and it's not him.
Now, Sheila and Tom have talked about this at length today as to whether his comments were anti-Muslim, anti-Islam. I don't really particularly want to get into that in this. I want to take a slightly different angle, because I think we have to be consistent here. If Nick Timothy objects to however many hundred Muslims it was gathering together in Trafalgar Square to celebrate the end of Ramadan, then surely he would have to also object to all of the other religions that have done exactly the same thing and celebrated parts of their religion in Trafalgar Square over the years. In Cross Question, I put to Joy Morrissey, what about if, say, Orthodox Jews were gathering together in Trafalgar Square and one of her MPs tweeted exactly the same words, act of domination? Would she not object to that? No, she said she believed in complete freedom of speech. I think that would be roundly condemned by many people. So if you condemn that, you have to condemn this. But what is it about these displays of religion that annoys so many people? I'd like you to phone if you get annoyed about whether it's Muslims, Jews, Christians, Sikhs, Hindus gathering together in a major part of our capital city to publicly display their religion. What's wrong with that? And if I, as somebody who isn't religious at all, can't see any great objection to that, why should anyone else? 0345 6060 973. So why do so many of us become uncomfortable about public displays of any religious faith? Well, Fayez Mughal joins me, founder of Faith Matters, a project which aims to promote integration and cohesion between different religious faith groups and tackle hatred and extremism. Fayez, welcome. Why is it, do you think, that people feel the need to tell everyone else what their religious beliefs are?
Well, I think there is I think we're in a position where for example, some people feel the need to carry their identity through the form of their religious identity, and they'll explain their identity. Some people may feel more comfortable with explaining that and addressing that. Some people feel more comfortable with wearing that on their sleeve. I think in the general public, which your discussion is really about, in the general public, I think there's a deep history where we have internalized religion and we have made it a very personal, sacred space, and we've placed it within religious institutions as to places where people can worship. And there's a historical context for that because of the Reformation, because of the pain that internal civil wars have created in our country between parliament, state and king and religion. And so we have a long history where actually there have been some uncomfortable splits in our country, and it's led to this personalization and individualization of religion. So there is a discomfort in some parts of our community and country where open religion, where it's demonstrated, feels really uncomfortable.
I mean, there is a tradition of people, I was going to say evangelizing, but I mean, is that a word that you can only use with Christianity, I suppose? But I mean, I don't know. How does a Muslim evangelize? Is it sort of, basically spreading the word of your religion? And these mass events effectively are a part of that process, aren't they?
The answer to that is yes, there is an element and component. You're absolutely right. There's a component around mass evangelization in respect of people praying in large numbers. That's an element of it. It's not the predominant element. That's an element of it. When people see that, it's a way of drawing them into a discussion, and that could be a way of evangelizing. There's also evangelizing, I know that happens down Oxford Street. You go and look at Christian preachers and Muslim preachers having a debate and having a chat with members of the public and putting religious texts and conversations and speeches in the public domain. And so evangelization takes place in different ways. But yes, there is a subtle form of evangelization when people are en masse praying. So yes, there's an element of that. It's not the overriding element, but you're right.
But it's also about community and tribe, isn't it? Because each religion is effectively a tribe. You belong to a religion, you belong to a tribe. I was using the analogy of football as well, because football supporters belong to their tribal team. And they believe, despite all the evidence, that their team is the better than anybody else's, just as people presumably belong to a religion because they believe that their religion is truer to whatever cause than anybody else's. So this is a whole societal issue, isn't it? It's not just about religion on its own. That's
right. You're absolutely right. This is a societal, a human behavioral and an identity-based set of issues. And look, let's come to the core of it. At the core of this also is human behavioral. We have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, all of us, to be able to survive in packs. And surviving in packs means we have something in common that brings us together. So at the core of this is human behavior, which is then layered on with issues of identity, where we come from, our nationality, our religion. And yes, Christians, Jews, Muslims will all feel they've got the right path, the only path. Now, that's a part of it. Now, with a person with me, that doesn't particularly sit well, because I think you can have a path of goodness without God. You can have a path of goodness in one element of religion, but not all elements of religion have the true path. So I'm a bit of a doubting Thomas in this whole process. But nonetheless, what you've said is absolutely right. There is this sense of identity and we are the only way. Well, actually, that's a part of it as well.
Now, you run an organisation which promotes integration and cohesion between different religious faith groups. I mean, is that a thankless task in many ways? Because, there are certain religions that are at each other's throats and have been throughout history. I mean, I think of the whole Kashmir issue, which is fundamentally a split between Muslims and Hindus, and never the twain shall meet. I mean, how do you approach understanding in those circumstances?
It is a thankless task, Ian, and it's got worse over the last 20, 30 years as we have seen more entrenchment in people's religious positions. We have seen more entrenchment, more fundamentalism, more reaction. And I have to say, where social media has created much more anger and polarization, not just in religious circles, but within identity-based circles. So this is becoming a much harder task. And just from today's discussions online and social media, you can see the sense of polarization is getting much worse because these platforms want us to go against each other and get angry and respond.
And do you think Nick Timothy's words have fueled that?
And I'm going to be frank with you. I know Nick. I know Nick, and I think Nick is no Islamophobe. Nick is a decent, caring, gentle man. He's entitled to his opinion, but I think these comments in this scenario were not the best put, and I don't think they were accurate for this scenario. I understand what Nick was trying to do, because Nick has a point, and again, we have to be fair and accurate. Nick has a point. In countries like in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood has used religious events to exert influence, but those are different contexts. This context was an Eid event. There's no kind of political context to it, and people, in a way, didn't have a space to pray, and they got together and prayed. The context is different, but these kind of comments that Nick should be booted out, he's an Islamophobe, are also inaccurate, because I know the guy, he's decent, he's gentle, he understands Islamism, but I disagree about his choice of words, and I disagree about this specific context. Does that make sense? The world of nuance is being lost in this craziness we're in.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Fayez, thank you, and good to talk to you again. That's Fayez Magal, founder of Faith Matters. Well, we'll come to your calls in a moment. Why do so many of us become uncomfortable about public displays of any religious faith? I say so many of us. I can't really say I do. The time when I do feel a little bit uncomfortable is when I see people on the streets promoting their particular religion, because they do tend to be the real devout ones. I would say in some cases quite extreme ones. But then again, how is that any different to, in my former days in politics, going door to door, knocking on doors, asking people to vote for the party that I supported? I mean, it's a similar thing, isn't it? It happens in all walks of life, not just religion. 0345 6060 973. It's 19 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
You've arrived. Your dream holiday. You got there for less thanks to comparing flight prices on Kayak. An idyllic local restaurant nestled in the cliffs. A peaceful pool with your own private sunbed. This is the life. All you have to do is actually book it. Don't holidays. Use Kayak to compare flight prices from hundreds of travel sites and bag a great deal. Search Kayak and go see for yourself.
At SSE Energy Solutions, we know businesses are full of different kinds of energy. Like your fourth coffee of the morning energy. Your yes chef energy. And even, as per my last email, energy. You can bring any energy you like to your business, but at SSE Energy Solutions, we bring simple, affordable energy. Choose SSE Energy Solutions, a different kind of energy.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
I'm really looking forward to hearing your views on this subject. So let's start off with Shah in Milton Keynes. Hello, Shah.
Hi, Ian. How are you today?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
So I'd like to summarize it in a little bit, because I've been listening to your previous session as well and this session as well. So basically, I think the first thing we need to understand is that knowledge is power. Unless we've been overtaken by Game of Thrones, the whole world has been by power is power.
Do you know, that's a really interesting phrase you used there, knowledge is power. Do you know when I first heard that, I don't know if you're a fan of Coronation Street, but there was a character who used to own the supermarket called Reg Holdsworth, and his assistant was a man called Curly Watts, played by Kevin Kennedy, and he used to say, "Mr. Watts, knowledge is power," and it became a mantra, and I thought that is such a truism, isn't it?
It is, because what we need to understand is that sometimes we just forget about the things that happen as they should be happening. So just to let you know, why knowledge is power is because what we need to understand that Muslims pray 5 times a day. But in Ramadan, there are 2 prayers which get followed very closely when they open their fast, which is called the iftar, and when they close their fast, which is called the suhoor. These 2 events are followed very quickly within the next 5 to 10 minutes with the prayer, with the congregation. So if they were invited to an iftar, they had to pray somewhere. So it was not just how Nick probably didn't mean it, like your guest speaker said, and I agree with him. Maybe it was out of context, but it was not a display of a political statement. It was something they had to do, because when you open your iftar, you have to pray within the next 5 to 10 minutes. So that's one thing. So that's why probably I meant what I meant by knowledge is power. But then the other thing what I wanted to say is that we have gone on the wrong ideology of Cersei Lannister by saying power is power. I perfectly resonate and agree with you that there is no harm. We've had previous events of Diwali in Trafalgar Square. We've had the Jews celebrate their days there. We have the Baisakis. So, and I would give credit to the mayor, because being a Muslim, he's actively been participating in all these other religious affairs as well. Now, when we talk about diversification of a society, we talk about grassroots inclusion of different communities. I think Britain is the biggest capital of diversification in the world. I think we talk about harmony, we talk about peace, but just like John Lennon said, we probably got lost in translation. Being spiritual is something else, being religious is something else. I think what we have lost and what we do need to understand is that it's the same force. Even if you're not religious, you have to understand that there might be a singular force that's driving all of this down there. So giving it different names is what probably got lost in translation. But coming to a solution, coming to something that I would humbly like to put out there, there's no harm. If people want to come, they want to display the new abbreviation in the Oxford Dictionary, I think is PDRA, Public Display of Religious Affection. So if people want to do that, they should be more than welcome to do that. I don't think somebody should have a problem with that, as long as those people are staying within their boundaries, as long as those people are not there to make dominance, like Nick said, as long as they're more spiritually there than religiously, then I think it should be tolerated. And that's what I think what Britain is all about, isn't it?
I couldn't have put it better myself. I did learn a new word this week. I've read Naz Shah, the Labour MP for Bradford West. She's written a memoir about her childhood, which is pretty harrowing reading, and it'll be out on my All Talk podcast later in the month. But one of the words that she used throughout this book was "izzat."
Yes, respect.
Yeah, and it sort of transcended her whole story. And you got to the end of the book and you thought, well, given, people who know her background will know that she led a very traumatic childhood. Yeah. Her mother was convicted of murdering somebody, and it was a very sort of poverty-stricken childhood, and she had experienced some terrible things. But this word "izzat" it was virtually literally every 3 or 4 pages it would come up. And by the end of the book, you thought, well, given that, she blamed a lot of the trials that she experienced on culture. But I kept thinking, no, this is a lot of people reading this will think it's your religion that's the problem here. And she then explained in the interview that I did with her exactly why her experiences have actually confirmed her religious beliefs rather than turned her against religion. So I hope you'll listen to that, Shah. It'll be out on my podcast, I think, in 2 weeks' time. And if you want to listen to the All Talk podcast, this week's episode is out today. It's with Alistair Bruce, who's the royal commentator for Sky News. Very, very interesting man. Shah, thank you very much for that. Somebody says here, are you not familiar with the book of Acts, Iain? ACTS. The whole purpose of sharing your faith is to save others and non-believers. If you don't, you aren't living to your faith. Well, I don't have a faith and I don't need to be saved. Some of you will disagree with that, I'm sure, but I don't feel the need for someone else to tell me what I should believe. I know what I believe. I know right from wrong, and yes, I've done many things in my life that would be considered morally wrong, but I don't need a representative of a particular religion to tell me that and to tell me how my soul can be saved. I just don't. I don't know whether you feel that way. Kieran's in Hampstead. Hello, Kieran.
Yeah, hello, Ian. I was going to disagree a little bit with your previous caller, because I was going to say that I think the best thing about religion is the fact that it has spiritual connection and it's a personal thing to each person. You know, it gives something, it fills a gap in their life personally as a support function. And that's all religions.
Well, I think that's true. I think that people do use religion, not everybody, but I think a lot of people use religion as almost an emotional crutch.
Absolutely, it fills something that other elements of your life can't fill. But the problem I have with what you're discussing here, and possibly in alignment with what that MP mentioned in the tweet, is that there has seemed to be a movement where some religions have become effectively political movements, and then I think it's dangerous when a religious group, their politics is governed by their faith, and that isn't so much to the extent. I think if you could take, for example, Buddhism, for example, is a very personal spiritual religion, and I don't think you could level that accusation. Well, I can't think of an example, but there are. I think the Abrahamic religions, certainly Christianity and Islam, are inherently political. They are designed to convert. They have a history of colonialism, both of them, and that's how they've survived over the years. So the danger is that if you adhere to the tenets of those faiths which are political in nature, in this country, we follow a secular system of laws, as we should do, but then you have this dichotomy of, allowing everyone to practice of faith, which is great, but if certain faiths are inherently political, and you've already seen it with the Green Party, they court specific religious groups for the votes to influence, their views on foreign affairs.
Well, they're not the only ones to have done that, are they?
Well, Labour do it as well. Labour have done it for years, and the Green Party are getting better.
I would say all political parties do it to one degree or another. It's just that sometimes we don't. I was talking to a friend of mine at lunchtime today about a particular MP in a particular constituency, a Conservative MP actually. And this MP, you would think, given I'll tell you who it is, Bob Blackman, the MP for Harrow in the west of London. And he was the only Conservative MP to see an increase in his majority at the last election. Well, that, I understand, is in part because there's a large Indian community in that constituency, and he's been very assiduous in courting their votes. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's good for politicians to understand the concerns of different groups within their constituencies. But you'll find a similar thing happen in, say, Leicester, where you've got various MPs who've courted the Muslim vote, and they're being criticised for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fine to court those votes if for domestic issues, for local issues, which is not an MP's job. But if an MP is saying, well, we're going to support, for example, action in Palestine against Israel, which is completely irrelevant to an MP's role,
is it?
Only because they've got a large Muslim vote population, then that suddenly skews.
Hang on a second. If that large Muslim population is concerned about that particular issue, why wouldn't an MP want to engage with that community? That's not to say that I necessarily agree with them all the time, but I don't see any problem with MPs from all different parties understanding the motivations of different groups, whether they're religious or not, in their constituency.
I can see the logic of it. I can see the bandwagon jumping, if you want to call it. What I'm saying is I'm concerned about that because it will skew our politics, the UK's politics. If we are governed by effectively, religious edicts based on, how many thousands of years old, in terms of our policies in various areas of, that would be a fundamental shift in the UK's governance, wouldn't it? Because we are supposed to be a secular governed country.
Well, it would. And I mean, in some ways, what you're saying is these 5 independent MPs who were elected at the last election, effectively in place of Labour MPs, I think, in most of those constituencies, they only won because of their position on Gaza.
On Gaza, yeah, now, that's correct.
I think that has caused a lot of concern among many people. But they were voted in. I mean, they were voted in by their constituents. So you can't really argument with the people voting, because otherwise you're basically saying, well, I know better than you. And that's an incredibly patronising thing to say.
No, I'm not saying that. I think all I'm saying is, and going back to that tweet that MP produced, is that, if we go down this route of appeasing certain religious groups, even more than one, based on religious edicts and religious views, our politics will change, fundamentally from what this country was founded upon, which is, effectively a secular governance. We might as well go back to the 12th century and be, a Christian, colonizing power then in that case, which we've moved away from. So, that's what's considered. I presume that's the line that this MP was taking, whether he used clumsy language or not.
Kieran, thank you very much indeed. Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. We are asking, why do so many of us become uncomfortable around public displays of religious ceremonies and religious symbols? It's 9:32, news headlines on LBC with Daryl Jackson.
A second university in Kent confirmed it's affected by a meningitis outbreak in the county, where 20 cases are under investigation. Canterbury Christ Church says one of its students is affected. A rollout of vaccines has begun today at the Canterbury campus of the University of Kent. Iran's president confirmed the regime's intelligence minister has been killed. Ismail Khatib's death follows that of Iranian security chief Ali Larijani, whose funeral is taking place in Tehran. And the US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, has decided to keep interest rates on hold. It's also projected higher inflation, steady unemployment and only a single rate cut this year, warning the war in Iran is adding to uncertainty. LBC weather clear tonight, although fog patches will form in the early hours. Chilly with a rural frost, lows of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
What's the best present you ever got for your birthday? I bet it wasn't as life-changing as £1 million. Every week with the birthday draw, there's £1 million to be won. And you can enter from as little as £1 or via post. Enter by midnight on Sunday and your special day could win you £1 million. Visit thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. 18 plus, UK only, no purchase necessary.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
9:35 on LBC. We're talking about whether we approve or not of public displays of religion. And as a religious person, it doesn't bother me at all if I see 500 Muslims praying in Trafalgar Square. It doesn't bother me if I see 500 Jews praying in Trafalgar Square or 500 Christians or whatever. Why should it matter? And the reason we're talking about this is because the Conservative Shadow Justice Secretary, Nick Timothy, has expressed his, mild outrage, I suppose is the best way of putting it. Let me just read you his tweet. He said, and he had a picture of this event with Sadiq Khan as well. Too many are too polite to say this, but mass ritual prayer in public places is an act of domination. The Adhan, which declares there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, is, when called in a public place, a declaration of domination. Perform these rituals in mosques if you wish, but they are not welcome in our public places and shared institutions. And given their explicit repudiation of Christianity, they certainly do not belong in our churches and cathedrals. I'm not suggesting everybody at Trafalgar Square last night is an Islamist, but the domination of public places is straight from the Islamist playbook. Trafalgar Square belongs to all of us. It is a national memorial to our independence and our salvation. Last night was not like a televised football match or a St. Patrick's Day celebration. It was an act of domination and therefore division. It shouldn't happen again. Well, some very, very strong words there. It is true, the quotation that he used there, it is true about, I think the word domination is actually used. But is that any different to Catholics gathering in Rome, in the Vatican? That is a mass act of public prayer. I don't know whether Nick Timothy would find that an act of domination. He would point out that phrase is not used in the Catholic religion, Christian religion. I mean, an act of mass prayer goes on in every church every Sunday, most days of the week in a lot of bigger churches and cathedrals. Is that an act of domination? What would be the Hindu equivalent or the Sikh equivalent? Do you see where I'm going with this? And I think it is slightly dangerous to pick out one religion, but then again he will say, well, they do use that word. Michael is in Dover. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Ian. A couple of points I wanted to raise. There's a time and a place to practice one's religion. I don't have a particular faith, but ironically, I was driving up the M11 yesterday evening, northbound, and I glanced across. I was driving a lorry, and I glanced across to the southbound carriageway. Couldn't believe my eyes. A car had parked on the hard shoulder, and a chap had laid a mat in front of the car. And as I was driving up, he's kneeling down as if to pray. So obviously that's not the time or the place. But anyway, that's a side issue.
Well, I imagine the police would have arrested him for that, quite rightly.
Seen him, yeah, of course. But the main reason I was phoning, I do get a bit concerned when we tend to become apologetic for celebrating, say, Christmas and Easter, and some schools seem embarrassed about practicing such a celebration. Whereas surely the emphasis should be to celebrate the Christmas and Easter in a traditional way with enthusiasm, and at the same time, surely introduce other faiths' premier days that they have for celebrating their religion. And surely if we did that in schools at an earlier stage, we'd have a far more tolerant society towards all religions.
Well, you're completely right. And I've never understood this idea that just because a school might have quite a few pupils who are not Christians, that therefore they shouldn't mark Christmas because we are Christian. I mean, whether you're religious or not, we are essentially a Christian country. And Christmas is important to many people, even if they're not particularly religious. And I have never met a Muslim or a Sikh or a Hindu or a Jew who thinks that somehow in this country we should mitigate our celebration of Christmas. I'm going back to that Nashar book I was telling you about earlier. She talks about her childhood in Bradford, being brought up as a devout Muslim, And they would celebrate Christmas as well because everybody else did. It was part of what Britain is all about. And she and her family didn't have a problem with it, and I don't see why anybody would. And particularly for people who've come to this country from other countries over the years, I think over time, I mean, it's just part of the tradition of this country. It's part of being British, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Why can't I can never understand why anyone would want to come to a country and then change it.
No.
Certainly enhance your beliefs and your lifestyle as best you can. But the reason we've got a society in this country the way it is because it's been developed over centuries. And if you don't particularly like the society that we have here, then perhaps this isn't the place to come. But if you do come, you're welcome. And, yeah, share whatever beliefs you have and allow us to understand your beliefs.
Yeah, and that is what religious education should actually promote. And certainly when I was at school, which was a very long time ago now, I can remember doing religious studies, and we did learn about different religions. I mean, I have to say, it wasn't sort of one of the subjects I was best at, and it almost confirmed my view that I could not believe in a God until someone proved to me that God existed. Michael, thank you very much. Dave says, as I once explained to my son, religious wars, my invisible God doesn't like your invisible God, so us mortals are going to kill and maim each other to prove a point that our God is better. Well, there is a certain logic to that, isn't there? And if you look in history, you will find that the overwhelming majority, I'm not going to say all, but the overwhelming majority of wars in history have got some religious basis to them. And there is a reason for that. It goes back to what I was saying about tribes, doesn't it? My tribe is better than your tribe, and we're going to fight you to prove it. I mean, that's essentially what war is all about. Certainly was in sort of prehistoric times. It was that simple. Now it's a little bit more complicated than that nowadays. Lawrence says, everyone I know who is religious says it gives them a sense of security. For me, I'd rather be insecure and say I don't know all the answers. Totally agree with you on that, Lawrence. And Phil says, if I can just get this text up here, I'm like you. I'm not religious in any way. I think it's all brainwashing nonsense. If they want to congregate in groups and pray and do what they want, that's fine. It doesn't make any difference to me. Let them get on with it. They won't change my mind or my views. I want no part of it. Christian, Muslim, anything to me, it's all rubbish. I really don't feel like I'm missing out. And I'm 53 now. That's Phil in High Wycombe. Well, I don't think you are missing out. There was a time in my life when I was at university, a lot of my friends, they went to what was called then the chaplaincy. It's now called the Multi-Faith Centre. And they clearly, I was always fascinated by what they got out of their religion. And they clearly did get a lot out of it. And I thought, well, I want some of that. So I used to go along to some of their sessions, and I would sit there in utter bemusement, thinking, how can they believe this? How can they live their lives almost in hock to a God that they can't know that exists? Yes, they have a faith that their God exists, but how come they haven't got the independence of mind to judge for themselves whether a certain thing in society is right? But they all would pledge allegiance to this amorphous being. And I mean, eventually I thought, well, okay, leave them to it. They can get on with it. They clearly get something out of it. Good on them. It's not for me. And I've never really changed my mind on that. I suspect a lot of you are very similar. But feel free to give me a call. Tell me what you get out of your religion and why you think it's important that there are public displays of religion. It's 9:45.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Kemi Badenoch defends a member of her team who claimed that Muslims praying in Trafalgar Square was an act of domination. Is she right to do so? Plus the PE teacher who's lost his job for sharing his political views.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Whether your dreams are calling you outdoors to reconnect with nature or towards moments of pampering and relaxation to rejuvenate your soul, you can bank on Lloyds to help make it happen. We've been asking listeners what their aspirations are for the year ahead to help create the ultimate prize packages to inspire that first step. Enter now for your chance to win one of 3 incredible experiences thanks to Lloyds and the nation's aspirations. Choose the prize for you at lbc.co.uk.
Go from bucket list to booked with EasyJet. Get package holidays from £319 per person and flights from £32 one way. So stop dreaming, stop scrolling, stop umming and ahhing. Book now at easyjet.com and get your holidays sorted today. Get out there. Selected dates and flights April to September. Limited availability. Holidays ATOL protected. T's and C's apply.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
This is 40-year-old Kathy, mother of 2 and self-confessed telly-addict.
Oh, look at you. That's brilliant. Well done.
This is also Kathy, working as part of a team to keep things calm at her local prison.
Listen, speak to me.
And helping someone's son write his first letter home in 8 months.
Well done. You should be really proud.
Thank you, miss. An extraordinary job, done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
Calling all young creatives. Kickstart your career in media. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12 at Global Academy. globalacademy.com.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
It's 9:48 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10, so 12 minutes to go. As I said earlier, don't forget the new All Talk podcast. It's a great listen with Alastair Bruce, the royal editor of, well, he's not the royal editor, he's the chief royal commentator for Sky News, fought in the Falklands. Fascinating career, fascinating life. Right. Let's go to more of your calls. But before we do, let's hear this text from Michael, who says, Ian, what do you think of Jehovah's Witnesses banning their members from voting? Well, Jehovah's Witnesses ban their members from doing a lot of things, don't they? Blood transfusions is one. I have absolutely no truck with them whatsoever. I've had members of my family who are Jehovah's Witnesses. And, well, my views on that particular branch of religion are relatively unprintable. So I think we'll end that one there. Grace is in Ealing. Hello, Grace.
Hi. First of all, thank you personally so much for putting up with me mentioning God on various occasions.
You do manage to bring it into most of your calls, Grace, which I think is quite an achievement.
Okay, thank you. Well, being on the autistic spectrum, I don't have a inherently good intuition about what other people feel and think. So I try to observe and learn what other people think about, in this instance, God and religion. And so I've been looking at people's opinions, and I think that it's certainly the case that a lot of people just presume we're all completely nuts. Similarly to what you've been saying, why would one believe in something that a person can't be completely certain of or measure? And I kind of felt that. When I was growing up, I was taken to church by my parents, and partly because I'm on the autistic spectrum and I was bullied at school, it was nice to be in that friendly environment at church. Yep. But I increasingly thought, well, why would one believe in any of this? And then later on, as I was looking at science, actually it started to make sense that there could be a creator.
So it was science that turned you?
Yeah, essentially.
So that's very interesting.
And there are a number of people who could expound on that far better than me. Someone said, everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man. That was Albert Einstein. And so, yeah, I can't really get my head around God, and I'm not an instinctively spiritual person, but I came to think actually it makes sense to some extent. And then I later came to read more about reasoning for concluding that the resurrection was true. But I know that a lot of people must just think we're completely nuts, and that they're completely entitled to think that. But I get that would deter people. And for those of us who do believe, it does give a sense of, I don't know, inner peace, joy. And so we want to share that with people, particularly if you do really, I know that you don't, but if a person does really believe that there's great news, and this is what the word evangelism actually means, it's evangel comes from good news, you might want to tell people. Like last week, I was glad that you had tweeted about how you'd managed to increase your bone density with a particular treatment and also with lifting weights, because I've managed to increase my bone density. I had osteoporosis diagnosed, but I've no longer got that diagnosis with weightlifting. And I thought it's good for people to know that there's this positive thing that lifting weights can help you to avoid osteoporosis and the damage of it. So I thought it's good to share this good information. Now, if you had information that someone could have great deep joy and even heaven, life beyond this one, you might want to share that positive information with people because you want them to know about it as well. So sometimes that's the motivation for people sharing, but then in different religions they might have particular instructions or practices about sharing as well.
And look, it's a natural thing to evangelize about something that is valuable to you and your life, and you want to share it with others. It happens in all aspects of life, whether it's, as I said before, whether we want to tell people about how wonderful our own football team is. I get obsessed about singers that I discover that I think are brilliant. I bang on about Mango Groove all the time, hoping that people throughout Britain will find out this wonderful band from South Africa and want to buy all of their records. That is a form of evangelizing, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And I think for me, I wasn't expecting in kind of, I don't know, turning my heart. That sounds weird to people, I know. But in coming to see that I believe that the resurrection actually happened, and then thinking, okay, so I will actually kind of commit to Jesus. I hadn't expected that it would give me a kind of a feeling of peacefulness inside, but it did, and I want other people to know that. I mean, thinking about this event in Trafalgar Square, there is going to be, I think, in many ways quite a different event because it's not kind of prayer in itself. And I am minded when we're talking about this event in Trafalgar Square today that Jesus did say not to pray just so that people could see you praying, and I don't know to what extent that was part of it, but I'm not trying to criticise those who took part in that event in Trafalgar Square. But in Trafalgar Square there's going to be a passion play, i.e. a performance of Jesus being crucified on Good Friday, unless plans have changed. And that will be because people are putting that on since they want other people to know about Jesus, because people are really pleased about what he's done for them and they want other people to know. But, I mean, the word religion has a lot of different connotations for lots of people, and some people will just have had really boring experiences in the past, or experiences of unpleasant individuals related to religion that they don't like. But the idea in Christianity is not that you kind of practice certain rituals to earn your way to heaven. It's instead that Jesus says, no, the only way is through what I've done, and you can choose to accept what he's done or not. But he also kind of got angry with some religious people because they wanted to show off all the time. And because they didn't seem to actually be trying to serve God, just to be wanting to dominate other people. When you talk about religious wars, I think that's a little bit like what Jesus got angry with. When he really argued with people, it was because they were using the concept of God as a way to try and dominate other people instead of personally trying to follow God. And it's really important that we don't make that mistake and just think of religion as a way to try to dominate other people and tell them what to do. Actually, Jesus says, no, you choose yourself in your heart to follow God, and that should impact what you do.
Well, Grace, you're a bit of an evangelist, aren't you? I think you're almost missing your calling. I thought maybe you should take it up professionally. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Derek in Cullen in North Scotland. Hello, Derek.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you. What would you like to say?
I used to be made to go to Sunday school. And I say that word made. It was never my choice. And I remember one story that the guy told us, and it was about you follow a certain football match. So you go to the game, but you come across the opponent's fans, a big group of them, and there's only you there of your team. And he says, what do you do? Of course, we're thinking, well, you'd be proud of what you believe in? No? He says, no. He says, you've got the opponent's scarf in your pocket. You take that out, and you act as though you're one of them. And I was like, what?
So that's where these half and half scarves came from, then?
Maybe. But to me, I was like, whoa, what
can you, Derek, can you imagine a Celtic or a Rangers fan doing that?
No.
No, I can't either.
And that is pure Catholic Protestant religion. It's like, what?
But the funny thing is, it is actually, if you boil it down, it's the same religion. They're both part of Christianity.
It's all fairy tales to me.
Well, it is to me too, but it still fascinates me.
But what I was saying to your colleague on the phone there, if I was to come across a big religious gathering in, say, Trafalgar Square, my first thought would not be hatred, not hatred. You know what I mean? Whatever the guy tweeted. I would be like,
yeah.
What's going on here?
I mean, I think you can't really call it hatred, but I think
no.
But that's an interesting point you raised there. What would be your first thought if you saw that number of people from a particular religious faith doing whatever they were doing in Trafalgar Square? And I would like to think my first thought would be, I wonder what that's all about.
Exactly. Is that not what life's all about? Just discovering new things and asking questions and not go into it with an open mind.
Absolutely right.
I know a lot of sardonic people. You don't believe what I believe. You're not worthy, kind of thing. Like, No. Life's way too short for that kind of thinking. Like, there's a massive world out there. Open your mind. Yeah. But that's just me.
Well, you probably reflect a lot of people's opinions, Derek. Thank you very much for that. Steve says, I don't know any school which is apologetic or doesn't practice Christmas. This is a myth trumped up by the media and right-wing protagonists. My wife, my sister, brother-in-law and 2 sisters-in-law are all teachers. Well, I have to say I've never actually come across a school that does that, but there we go. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Thanks very much indeed, Ian. Hello there. A very, very good evening to you this Wednesday. Kentish here with you on LBC. Coming up.
He described it as an act of domination, straight from the Islamist playbook. If we're in my team, it'd be gone.
As you've just been discussing with Ian, the Prime Minister today demanding that Kemi Badenoch sack a member of her shadow cabinet who claimed that Muslims praying publicly in Trafalgar Square was an act of division and domination. Badenoch, though, is standing by Nick Timothy, who she says was simply